You're there too, Daddy.
Be there for you.
Sure. Thanks very much for coming down yesterday.
I did nothing.
You did plenty.
Although a couple of people thought I was on the trip. This says it must be great.
You were in the boot all weekend. We didn't hear you.
A couple of people says Hodson looks delighted to see you after you've been away a few days.
Sure, it was great.
Sure, it was tight.
Sure, it was tight and tiny. There you go. But sure, it was brilliant. And the crowd that came out down to Creasle last night, and it was great because, you know, after Dennis organised him from there and Leslie and Tiny was down there and Ann Biddy performing and Niall up on the deck, you on the mic, and sure, it was great.
And great amount of money raised as well.
Brilliant. And it's still coming in. And at the end of the day, it was for two great families that are going through a really tough time. And that's what it was all about. And so it's nice to be back home safe.
Yes. And it's a bit of a... how does it feel, right? Because you were in bed, you said last night at 9. So that's about your normal bedtime.
It is, yeah.
Up at the normal time. It's the kind of...
You get on with it?
Yeah, but do you kind of feel like, oh, right, okay. Do you feel a bit of a come down?
No, I feel just normal. I feel just get on with stuff now. It's like the boys now, Leslie will be down in the garage, Dennis is getting on with things, and Marty Friel texts me, says, I'll cover for you this morning if you want. And then Dennis says, the kind of guy, it's a sign of a weakness.
It's true. It's true.
But I'm glad he came in because I enjoyed the buzz this morning, the programme.
Yeah, and to get back to normal. 3,800 miles, though, kilometres, an amazing trip. Like.
I was mad. And the boys themselves, they did some hairy runs over their time, all these adventures.
But I always, because the first bit of driving too is you're heading further away from where you need to go, isn't it? So when you left here, you had to drive to Malin.
Yeah, as a wee dander, yeah.
Yeah, but it's away before you start really.
And the time you come back and then you start and stuff. We did that down in, you know, a couple of places to.
So it's 4 hours before you're even in Sligo.
Yeah, but it was one of them things, you know, you'll always remember. And the crack was mighty. So thanks,
you
Greg.
Did the social media.
I was sitting in the front seat or the back
really
seat.
Well, actually.
Thanks. Well, I had to horse it out. It was too for families, like, so I had to pick up the ante. You know,
it was good stuff, and a lot of people actually felt part of it because they were able to track it.
Well, we did our best.
The updates here, but you know yourself.
Yeah, and thanks to Highland with, you know, all them linking ins throughout. We're unfortunate to not linking with Bernard yesterday because we were on the boat and we couldn't get reception and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
but Highland would been great.
You have to be careful with the roaming charges on boats.
I know, because I heard about 50 or 60.
Well, if it can be international charges, I don't know. Anyway, probably not on that route.
Right.
Okay, hey.
Good luck.
Have a goodie.
Thanks for having me. Right, bye-bye.
All right, he's away to cut hedges, I would say. It is 9 o'clock. Let's get a news update, and it's over to Donald Kavanagh.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning. Local medical professionals campaigning for a surgical hub in Letterkenny have expressed serious concern after Minister Marion Harkin indicated on the 9 till noon show on Friday last that she believes the hub has already been secured for Sligo. Minister Harkin said the decision to locate a hub in Sligo is part of the programme for government, and that's following her negotiations with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael after the election. Well, responding to the Minister's comments, Dr. Pádraig McGuinness said if that's the case, then the decision was made at the expense of 160,000 people in Donegal.
Based on what Minister Harkin said to Greg Hughes on Friday, it clearly hasn't been made on population grounds, on geography grounds, on access to services, on proximity to surgical specialties. It's clearly been made now in response to a political decision, and that really upsets us, and it upsets us because our patients are going to suffer as a result. And when we meet the Minister on Tuesday, we'll be saying that to her. We'll be reminding her that political things are one thing, but actually access to services and fair and equitable healthcare for everyone is much more important.
Regulations have been signed by the Justice Minister this morning, paving the way for the formation of local community safety partnerships in each council area. Minister Jim O'Callaghan says the safety partnerships will include a broader range of members than the joint policing committees they're replacing. Mandatory membership will include local councillors, local authority officials, Gardaí, representatives from the HSE and the Child and Family Agency TUSLA. Well, Councillor Jerry McMonigal was the chair of the outgoing JPC in Donegal. He says this has been a long time coming and he's looking forward to starting work on the formation of a local safety partnership for Donegal.
We've been following the time lapse from the GPCs were done away with and hope that the community safety partnership will kick on quickly. But there's had to be a few changes to legislation. We were informed last week that it was imminent, so it's really good news today to hear that, and we'll look forward now to setting up the new community safety partnerships. It'll probably take about 6 weeks to inform all the other stakeholders and then get a meeting, so we'll probably talk in September.
Donegal County Council says the R257 road is blocked for resurfacing at Cloddy today and tomorrow. Diversions are in place. There's a map available on our website showing the section that is being closed. Tomorrow is the deadline for Leaving Cert students to make changes to their CAO applications. Around 90% of applications do make changes to their original choices between May and June each year. At 5 tomorrow, the portal will close. That means choices already made can't then be changed. And there's a call for the state to step in to run Amis Ireland nursing homes. The Labour Party says patient safety and welfare can't wait for a HICWA review after an RTE investigates expose. The party is putting forward a Dole motion later this week. Health spokesperson Marie Sherlock says they're also making recommendations on the Fair Deal scheme.
So we are proposing changes to the Fair Deal pricing scheme, the introduction of minimum staffing levels, and ultimately ensuring that people who are in the business of providing nursing home care are doing so for the best of reasons and putting patient safety and welfare as a priority.
Mostly cloudy today with outbreaks of rain and drizzle, heavy and persistent at times, becoming drier and brighter later. Top temperature 17 to 20 degrees Celsius. Light to moderate southerly winds veering northwesterly as the day goes on. That's Highland Radio News. Back with more at 10 o'clock.
Jane is finally 7. Today her bike felt like it went 100 miles an hour and her hair was as beautiful as a mermaid's. For her birthday, Granny gave her some money to put into her savings book. Jane plans to save up for important things for when she's older, like a unicorn. From the moment you start saving, it feels good. For over 100 years, Ireland's state savings has helped people of all ages to save, with as little as they like, for as long as they want. Pick up more information at your local post office or search Ireland State Savings. Ireland State Savings. It's a good feeling. Terms and conditions apply.
And now, it's time for the talk of the Northwest, the 9 to Noon Show with Greg Hughes on Highland Radio.
It sure is. Good morning. You're very welcome along to Monday's 9 till Noon Show. Start of another week here of the programme, and the lines are open already. We're ready to go. If you've got anything you want to talk about, comment on issues or features that we have throughout the course of the morning, maybe there's something happened at the weekend that you believe we should be talking about, you can WhatsApp or text us on 086 60 25,000, 086 60 25,000, or give us a call on 07491 25,000. Caroline Orr, our researcher and producer, of course, taking your calls, ably assisted by Shannon. And you can email us as well, comments at highlandradio.com. And just to remind you, maybe you're on your holidays, maybe you're working from or in the home all the time, you can always watch the show. It's a very visual programme. Just stick us on your smart TV, on the YouTube app, Highland Radio Ireland, or on your Fire Stick for that matter. And you can stay tuned with us there. Let's have a look at what's making some of the front and inside of the papers today. The Derry People Donegal News on Garda Síochána spent almost €800,000 policing the Donegal International Rally in a three-year period, the paper can reveal. Figures released to the newspaper through a request under the Freedom of Information Act show the amount of money spent on policing and resourcing rally events from 2022 to 2024 has steadily increased. A total of €793,625 was spent by An Garda Síochána from 22 to 24. In 2024, the overall spend jumped €110,803, with €345,348 having been spent on policing and resourcing the major annual sporting event. This compared to just over €234,000 in 2023. Overtime claims from Garda members accounted for the highest spend in 24 at €287,595, followed by travel and subsistence claims, €35,000. Brilliant. Isn't it great to see a bit of money being spent by Gardaí in Donegal? It's all coming from our tax pay, the business rates and what have you. So I've no qualms about that. I don't know what you think. Maybe you think it's too big a bill or what have you. But I'm not too bothered about it at all. The Derry News, the Community Crisis Intervention Services based near Derry's Foyle Bridge is closing due to the cessation of its funding. The closure of the service, which is run by Extern, is scheduled for today, Monday, June 30th. More on the inside of the Derry News on that story. The Irish Daily Mail, and this is why I don't worry too much about spending a few £100,000 on Garda resources for a rally. Another IT fiasco for government. Major €3.6 million project awarded to the same company behind the Arts Council's shambles had to be abandoned after 6 months. A €3.6 million project awarded to one of the main companies behind the Arts Council IT fiasco was abandoned after 6 months. Scottish Ombudsman body FISRU, I'm not familiar with that, formerly GSOC, I'm familiar with that, I should probably know that, contracted the firm Codec in March 2024 to overhaul its case management system, with the software to become a fundamental piece of infrastructure. However, a FISRU spokeswoman has confirmed that the project was abandoned in September of the same year due to initial challenges, and that the body is currently engaged in a process with Codec regarding this contract. So another mess up there. I'm sure you might be aware of this. Perhaps maybe when students' fees were released, reduced by 50% or a third last year, it would be a third, wouldn't it? They're going to increase by 50. So if you go from 3,000 to 2,000, maybe that is a third. I don't know. I'm not having a good morning for thinking off the top of my head. But anyway, it made sending young ones or them funding themselves, going dependent on the situation, a little bit more affordable. And I think going from 3,000 to 2,000 in terms of fees opened up third level for a lot of people that perhaps, otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford it. And there was some sort of sense that this was the future. Because some of the press releases were along the lines of, we want to make third level education more affordable and we're introducing this measure. But apparently it seems to be a one-off measure because, unfortunately, student fees are reverting to €3,000 this September. And I'm very interested if this has any sort of impact on you, if it's something that you want to comment on. Students returning to college in September will have their fees revert to the amount owed before the government began introducing cost of living reductions 3 years ago. The last three budgets reduced student fees by €1,000 as part of wider once-off cost of living packages. That will not be repeated this year. Further, in Higher Education Minister James Lawless has said that fees will revert to what they were before such measures were applied. Speaking on RTE, he said the indications are that there won't be a cost of living package this year, so all of us in any walk of life has to pay has to play the hands we're dealt. If I don't have a cost of living package, I can't do these kind of measures that were done last year. So as I say, I didn't really, and maybe it's because I wasn't directly impacted by it, I didn't understand that the reduction of 1,000 was to do with cost of living packages. But anyway, fees back up to $3,000 this September. Right, on to the Irish Times now, and the government's expected to make a renewed push for certain key sectors to be exempted from the impact of new US trade policies amid growing expectation with the Cabinet that a baseline 10% tariff could remain even if a deal is reached between the European Union and the Trump administration in Washington. US President Donald Trump has threatened to impose 50% tariffs on all EU goods from July 9th unless the two sides reach a deal. Most EU goods already face a 10% tariff, with levies of 25% on cars and car parts and 50% on steel and aluminium. Talks between the EU and the US are continuing, but senior figures in Dublin are increasingly concerned that even if an agreement is reached, Washington will insist that a baseline 10% tariff remains in place, which is probably manageable for the European economies. And of course, there's a picture on the front of the Irish Times and all papers today with sport featured. Kerry's David Clifford and teammate Sean O'Shea embrace at the end of the All-Ireland semi-final championship quarter-final in Croke Park yesterday. This is Kerry dethroned Armagh. Not a good season for Armagh. No provincial championship and out the quarter-final stages. Donegal march on, though. We have Meath. And very interested to find out what you think about our chances against Meath, who might be the All-Ireland champions. I've noticed one thing on social media, and I'm not on it, the national stuff as much as it used to be. We're not very popular, which is great. People don't seem to like Donegal down the country. Not to a man, but just there is that sense. Jim McGuinness too, not as popular down the country as he would be up here. But that's obviously happens when you're successful and you play with a swagger, and that's what we're doing. And we had another big second half. It was a remarkable second half to secure our place in the last four. And as I say, we're going to play Meath, and it's Kerry Tyrone in the other half of the draw as well. So it's all very exciting. It's all to play for. What do you think? How do you think we'll fare that game in a couple of weeks? 086 60 25,000. Brendan Devaney, of course, is going to be joining us as he does every Monday to talk all things GAA. So anything from the weekend that you want to talk about in that regard? It doesn't have to just be the Donegal game. It could be any of the quarterfinals. Let us know. 086 60 25,000. Brexit deal to cost fishermen €800 million. Now, I've been saying every time I've been talking about fishing that as part of the Brexit deal, we were chucked under the bus. And I actually also was concerned that because that seems to happen, as part of any tariff talks, you would hope that industries that are important to us and not other big nations, we could end up being chucked under the bus in the tariffs negotiations. But anyway, almost $1 billion it's cost Irish fishermen, which is really quite remarkable. 800 million. Irish fishermen will lose 800 million in revenue because of the new EU-UK Brexit fisheries deal, which runs now until 2038. The claim was made by the Irish Fish Producers Organisation, Chief E. O'Donnell, who represents the majority of fishermen here. He warned the current EU quota allocations are disastrous for Ireland's coastal communities and an indictment of ongoing and systemic injustice at European level. So, we sometimes, as I say, can be that sacrificial lamb. A terribly shocking story from Northern Ireland over the weekend. The PSNI has launched a murder inquiry after the death of a pregnant mum of 2 at the weekend. Police say they received a report at around 2:15 p.m. on Saturday afternoon of an unconscious woman with a serious injury inside a house in the Elmfield Walk area in County Down. The woman, who was pronounced deceased at the scene, has been named as 27-year-old Sarah Montgomery. Police say she is confirmed to have been pregnant at the time of her death. DCI Tom Phillips said a 28-year-old man has been arrested in suspicion of murder and remains in police custody assisting with inquiries. Inquiries are at an early stage into this deeply tragic case. Our thoughts are also with Sarah's family during this incredible, difficult time as they struggle to come to terms with what has happened. And she leaves behind her 2 young children, and she was expecting a third as well. Not much I can say in relation to that because someone's been arrested and it's an active situation. But we talk a lot on this program about situations that can lead to those types of outcomes, and it's very, very worrying, very, very shocking. Finally, in the Sun this morning, did you watch much of Glastonbury? I'm a bit, don't know how to phrase this really. Obviously, we cover a lot of news through this program, and I keep my eye on news all of the time, as you can imagine. We all do, but sometimes you kind of want to switch off and, watch a bit of entertainment and, live music, especially the BBC's Glastonbury coverage. It's excellent. But I'm not sure about the level of politicism in it now. I don't want to be preached to by musicians, if that makes sense. Like I'll get my preaching elsewhere. I just find the political involvement in music. But then again, you see, the reason I'm struggling to articulate this is because freedom songs have been so critical in political movements over the years, and maybe I'm being stupid and naive. It's just sometimes, I suppose, because of the job that I do, it's it can be very, very intense, just this messaging all of the time. And obviously Kneecap were supposed to be, well, they did perform, as did the Henry Girls, by the way. I heard they were great. I still haven't managed to see their performance. But Kneecap were there, and the BBC did not stream their performance, but there was a duo that went up before them called Bobby Violin, and he was chanting death, death to the IDF, and it actually was broadcast on the BBC Player, which is a big problem for them. So they didn't broadcast Kneecap because they thought they might talk about whatever they might talk about. And then the act that they did stream beforehand, well, he was as bad as anything the Kneecap have come out with. But a woman burnt a finger, believe it or not. I hope she'll be okay. While live streaming Kneecap's Glastonbury gig, she was hailed by the band as a legend after millions saw her TikTok broadcast. Helen Wilson became a social media sensation after filming the set by the Belfast rapper on the festival's West Holt stage on Saturday. So that's the story coming out of it. Things that interested me. Great to see Lewis Capaldi back. Ms. Rodriguez did really well last night. It's not for everyone. I mean, she's an emerging artist, albeit huge, but she did a great show. I don't particularly like her music, but she put on a great show, and that's sort of my takeaways. But unfortunately, the entire festival now is talking about news, but maybe that's the important platform to have these conversations. I'm a bit confused. 086 60 25,000. What's your views on all of this? 086 60 25,000. That's the WhatsApp and text number. You can send in your WhatsApp voice notes if you want to as well. Or give us a call either on 074 91 25,000.
Daily newspapers are courtesy of Cosgrove, Centra and Diner, Mountaintop, Letterkenny.
A huge 3-day €1 million stock clearance marquee sale begins this Thursday the 3rd at McGinley's Furniture, Letterkenny. Sofas, beds, mattresses, dining sets, occasional furniture and more, all heavily discounted in store and even further reduced in the clearance marquee where there's up to 70% off. It's for 3 days only, Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 10 until 6 daily, and it's first come, first served. So don't miss out at McGinley's Furniture, Portling Business Park, Letterkenny.
If you're due soon, get your hospital bag packed for you and your baby in plenty of time. Plan your journey there so you're ready to go, day or night. Visit mychild.ie for advice on pregnancy, baby and toddler health.
At Fleming's, we take great pride in having provided quality steel and roofing to all our customers throughout Ireland since 1860.
Tell them about the doors, John.
OK, Mike. We also provide a full quality range of
Doors, industrial doors, garage doors, roller doors, insulated doors.
Thanks for that, Mike.
No dramas, mate.
Fleming's, engineering solutions for 150 years. Call us now on 074 91 48 234.
Highland Radio Time Checks brought to you by EirGrid, the operator and developer of Ireland's electricity grid. EirGrid, powering up communities, powering up Ireland. The time is?
It is just approaching 20 minutes past 9. So as we mentioned there, running through the newspapers, it has been confirmed, it was confirmed at the weekend, that the government's €1,000 student fee reduction has now been ruled out. In other words, it's returning to the $3,000 total. I'll get some views of Cassie Lamb in a second, but I will say good morning to you, Cassie. How are you getting on? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you again, and we do appreciate your time as always. It does make a difference, doesn't it? It went from 3 to 2. This is going to put pressure on people. I think it's going to be the difference for some as to whether or not their young people can go to college or not.
Yeah, 100%, Greg. So it was announced yesterday, and unfortunately, it's very easy to say it's going up by €1,000. Unfortunately, everyone doesn't have €1,000, especially when it comes down to students who may be paying for their college fee. They won't be able to get €1,000 within the week unless you're working 3 to 4 jobs maybe, which is not fair on students to be expected to be in college full time and then maybe having 2 or 3 jobs now, especially with the new €1,000. I personally think the notice of giving the €1,000 now coming up to the September, August time when students are going to be going back to college, it won't be fair, especially if you're in Galway, Dublin or any other county for college. Rent is soaring, the cost of living as well, it's nearly impossible to stand by for, and the €1,000 isn't making it any better.
I know, and we've got to the point now whereby I was in a 3-way conversation and a student said that their one room in Galway was €550 and a third person in the conversation said that's not bad. Now, obviously, it's not bad in the context, but we're being conditioned to think that £550 for a box room per month is good value. Now, I mean, obviously, there's cheaper available, but that's a lot of money. I know people, that's their mortgage.
100%. Like, say, even if you're on a disability allowance, and if you only get, say, just for an example, €800 maybe a week, maybe a month. Unfortunately, students may be paying €600 in Dublin for accommodation, which might be quite cheap. €600 for a box
It's
room.
not cheap. We can't allow ourselves to think that's cheap. Yeah,
it's not cheap at all.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and I hope I'm not contradicting it. It's just we've been conditioned to think that £600 is cheap. It's a blooming rip-off.
No, it it's not
Yeah.
cheap from working anyway. €600 gets you a long way.
Mhm.
But then that might only leave you saying the likes of €200 for groceries, for medications, for local transport. You know, it's just not enough anymore, and it's not fair. And even seeing last year, students standing up and student unions actually saying the chance saying we need a bit more support from the government, and the €1,000 is not going to help it whatsoever.
And of course, too, there can be houses with one student. There are others with two or three, such as it can work out.
Yeah, hopefully, anyways, for them. It always just depends on the students and who's in the room with them.
All right, let's take in Deputy Pierce Doherty, who is Sinn Féin's finance spokesperson. Pierce, good morning to you. Thanks so much for your time, as always.
Thank you, Greg.
Hi, Pierce, how are you doing?
Were you of the view, obviously, maybe it was clear to you, but did you understand this as a cost of living measure, or did you think this was the government's pathway to eliminating third level fees? I can't hear you, Pierce, there for some reason, unfortunately. Okay. No, okay. We'll go back to Pierce in a second. I can't hear him. I can see him, but I can't hear him. We'll try it another way. 086 60 25,000, by the way, if you want to get in on this conversation. 086 60 25,000. Sorry about that, Pierce. We'll go this way. Good morning to you again. Sorry, I was asking you, are you of the view that this was a cost of living measure or something the government were doing with a view to eliminating fees altogether?
Yeah, look, it was announced as a cost of living measure. There's no doubt about that. But over the last number of years, ourselves, the USI, and the students protesting has moved the government into a point where they're saying that they're going to abolish these fees full stop. So therefore, nobody expected, I think, that these were going to go back up, particularly in the middle of a cost of living crisis. And, the idea that the minister just comes out at the weekend and says to students and parents that, you're going to be paying €1,000 more fees come September. Like, that is a bolt out of the blue. Like, they've just agreed a programme for government which says that we're going to end these fees. And, we've been trying, Greg, over the last number of weeks, myself in particular, on behalf of the party, is to get the government to understand just what the pressures are that families are under. And this makes absolutely no sense. And it doesn't make sense at a time when, the state has like billions. We're not talking millions, but billions of euro that they're not going to spend. And this is a way of supporting families, supporting education. And it is a double whammy. When Cassie was talking there about the cost of accommodation, what they've did last week in relation to rents means that students now are going to be paying more rent because landlords are going to be able to reset the rates, something that they weren't allowed to do in Dublin and Galway. It didn't apply to Letterkenny. It didn't apply to Gweedore or Killybegs and all the rest. But we know that many of our students travel to Galway, travel to Dublin, travel to Limerick. These are places where all rents were actually fixed. You weren't allowed to increase them more than 2%, and now landlords are going to have are going to be able to set them as high as they want. So this is a real double whammy for parents out there, and something that has to be reversed immediately.
Because the decisions you make now, it might be a couple of years before you actually see the impact beyond what families feel, immediately. And I'm saying this as a citizen, as a dad, and it's not political. Like, we need to be investing in our future for this country to grow and to develop. We need to be getting young people through the education system, coming out the other end, tooled and equipped to meet the needs of a modern Ireland, to continue prosperity, maybe even to diversify away from the foreign direct investment tax that we've become so reliant on. I genuinely don't understand the logic, because I'm sure it's not massive amounts of money as part of the wider budget. I'm struggling to work out why we're going down this route. We need to be investing in our youth and in our future.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's not massive in the context of, the overall budget. Sinn Féin is arguing actually we should go further than just the €1,000. We're suggesting that there should be a €1,500 cut to the student fees this September, with the intention then of getting rid of them altogether. And that would cost like 150 million. And as I said, when you have a surplus of 8,500 million that you're not spending, 150 million is a good investment in education, a good investment in families. And the reality is, Greg, like parents will go to the end of the earth to try and support their children. They will make extreme sacrifices in cases to try and get that education. But there is only so far like the elastic can be pulled before it snaps. And there will be parents, and I've heard parents in the past. It might be a case where you've got two now in college, or indeed you might have three in college, and that third person, that extra €3,000 of student contribution on top of what you've already done. I was talking to a parent there just last night when they heard this news, and they were saying, I've already got somebody in college. I've a second person going in. It's costing them €20,000 between accommodation, fees, and maintenance. And the maintenance is tiny compared to the accommodation and the fees. And like they're saying, to get the other 20,000, like we've done everything, but that extra 1,000 now that the government has just pulled has just heaped on us out of the blue, on top of what the rents may be now, because they're no longer a rent pressure zone. They don't know if their second child can actually go to college. Like that's the impact of this here. It's not small, and it's absolutely ridiculous. We have the highest fees now in the European Union, and education should be a right. It shouldn't be about who's got the deeper pockets, who can afford this. Education is a right, and it should be a right at primary, secondary, and right up to third level, and that's what we stand for.
Cassie, I wonder, obviously that initially you might think, right, certain people now won't go to college or they'll defer or what have you, but I think Deputy Doherty referenced this. I think what will happen is already struggling families will move heaven and earth, or forego some little luxury that maybe they had planned for themselves, maybe a holiday or something, to make sure their children can go on and continue their education.
Yeah, like as Pierce was saying, this is the reality. Like, families shouldn't be sacrificing heaven and earth, sacrificing, necessities just to get children or their child through college. With the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that is one of the goals is quality education, and we're supposed to hit those goals by 2030. And it's actually making me quite question if we will hit that goal when the €1,000 is coming in recently as well. It's just not fair for students. It's not fair for the parents. It's just not fair at all. And I just hopefully we will see that this will be reversed for the students anyways.
Pierce, can you just a couple of texts coming in explain how the changes to the rent pressure zones, etc., might impact families, I suppose, particularly into September? Is it the fact that if you give up your accommodation for the summer months that it's reset effectively, and if they wanted to go from 450 to 650 they could, but they couldn't previously? Could you explain how this might affect Northwest families?
Yeah, so obviously the rent pressure zones are coming into the Northwest, so landlords who are renting in Letterkenny or elsewhere will not be able to put up their rents more than 2%. We believe that there should be a complete ban on rent increases, but that's the fact under the government's plan. There will be further measures coming in March of next year, which means that landlords will be able to reset their rents for every new tenant. So, for example, if your son or daughter is renting in Dublin at the minute, and they're in college in UCD or DCU or wherever, then basically they're in a rent pressure zone, which means the landlord can't increase the rent more than 2%. Even if they leave that accommodation, if another student goes in, the landlord is bound to keep it to the same level as it was previously, so it can only go up 2% per year. So basically there is rent controls there. That is now changing, and every time there's a new tenancy going into that house, the landlord can set it at whatever level he or she wants. This is really going to impact students because students change every year. So basically every time a student will go into a student accommodation in September, the landlord will be free to actually set the rent at whatever rate, and that's really, really significant. What that could mean is that somebody could be renting a house in Drumcondra at the minute, and the house could be like, say, €1,600 per month. Like, this isn't scaremongering. That house could go up to €3,000 per month. month. The reason it's 1,600 is because it's under a rent pressure zone for the last number of years. So this is a huge impact, and obviously these are monthly figures. So like you're talking about thousands of euro extra that could be placed on burdens on families. Greg,
a caller says the €1,000 reduction is student contribution fee is very misleading. It's not for everyone. Only students that already apply for the free fees initiative that cover the tuition fees. Regular students that don't qualify for this still had to pay the full amount. Is that I don't understand that. I'm just going to be completely honest.
So student contribution fees, the caller is right. It's called the student contribution as opposed to student fees because the government doesn't want us to, or wants us to think that there is no fees. But look, a Rose Blaney, it's just a different name. That's the reality of it. And yes, parents with certain incomes below a certain amount will be able to apply for either the contribution not to be paid. The state would have to pay the contribution, or if your income is above a certain level, you may be able to get a portion of that contribution paid. The reality is over half of all households, I think, pay this contribution in one way or another. So the caller's right, not every single student is going to get this, because if you're a very low income family, you won't have to pay the contribution in the first instance. But the point here is, and something we thought accepted by government, is education is a right. Education should be free. That's why it's in the programme for government. And now, instead of going to actually reduce this contribution, what they've decided to do is next year they're saying to people, you have to pay an extra €1,000. So even if you are benefiting, even if you were a low income family and you are benefiting from a reduction, say a 50% reduction, it now means that you're going to be paying another €500 more, and that's just too much, like in the lump sum in September.
And of course, too, you have to also understand there are a lot of people, to maybe mum and dad working, and they still can't qualify for certain things, even though they don't necessarily have any spare money. Deputy Doherty, thank you very much for your time. Have a good day. Appreciate it. Cassie, are you in college this year?
No, I'm not in college this year. I'm going into fifth year.
Into fifth. I've been speaking to you for so long. I have no idea what age you are. Okay, that's great. So you're going into fifth year. How was transition year?
Yeah, I loved TY. It was a great experience for myself. I did my work experience up in Highland as well. So no, I really enjoyed TY. I tell anyone just to do it. It's good fun, and you won't regret it anyways.
No, I think it is great for development. Widening friends groups and all that type of stuff as well. All right, listen, good stuff. Thanks,
Perfect.
Cassie, as always.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Take care of yourself. Cassie Lamb, youth activist in Donegal, and Deputy Pierce Doherty as well, their Sinn Féin spokesperson on finance.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com.
This July 18th and 19th, Gweedore comes alive with Salt Music Festival 2025. On Saturday 19th, experience The Stunning, the Sharon Shannon Big Band with Garen Noon, the Luke Combs Experience and many more. For more information and tickets, go to saltfela.ie. Salt Music Festival 2025. 2 days, one place, great music.
For all your training needs, Northwest Forestry Services Training Department Ballybuffet offer a wide range of courses from training bodies such as NPTC City and Guilds, QQI, LADRA and ABA International. Courses include all land-based services such as chainsaw, tree climbing and rescue, pesticides, working in heights and ATV training. Other courses offered include first aid responder, manual handling and building safety, to name but a few. For a full list of training courses and availability, contact Northwest Forestry Services Ballybuffet on 074 9132033.
Rossview Interiors in Letterkenny are delighted to offer a limited quantity of sofas just in at unbelievable knockdown prices, with suites reduced from €2,050 to €1,250 and corner suites from just €1,350. There's also storage beds down from €650 to €450 and huge savings on a selected range of dining sets. So make your way to Rossview Interiors, Rossview Business Park, Letterkenny, just off the Polestar roundabout, as these bargains won't last.
All right, you're very welcome back to the 9 till noon show. As you might remember, we had a conversation with Marion Harkin, Minister Marion Harkin. She represents Leitrim and Sligo and a bit of South Donegal, about whether or not she had received commitments from government that a surgical hub located in Sligo, and also if Well, I'll play back a clip of the conversation we had with her, and we can tease it out thereafter. I know there's a slight. I just want to clarify one thing for you, with you, if that's okay. When you say that you got a commitment in the programme for government for a surgical hub for the Northwest, was the commitment you received specific to Sligo, or was it for the Northwest generally?
At that point, if you go to the HSE business plan, it was described as a surgical hub for Sligo. It was already there in the HSE business plan, and that is what I pushed for, because I believe it will serve most of the Northwest.
Minister Harkin, I want your sort of a reflection from you, but I just want to clarify something, and I'm sorry to keep, maybe I've already clarified this, but the location of a surgical hub in Sligo, as recommended by the HSE and as predates, your agreement with them, I recognise all that.
Yeah.
That is actually forms part of an agreement for your government support. I phrased it maybe a bit antagonistically earlier, and I didn't intend to do so really. I couldn't phrase it as I wanted to, but it is a fundamental plank of your support for government. Is that fair to say?
Greg, that it was already there in the HSE capital plan.
Understood, yeah.
And I wanted to make sure it remained there.
All right, okay, so she wanted to make sure it stayed there. That was in response to the question that it was a fundamental plank in her support for government. Okay, and my word, I waffle. But anyway, that's another story. Dr. Pádraig McGuinness is a GP and a member of the 171 Doctors and Medical Professionals campaign for Letterkenny to be the centre chosen for a surgical hub. Now, I'm not saying I accept, Pádraig, that Sligo as the location was in the HSE plan. I just phrased it that way because that's was Minister Harkin's contention. But, you're at the coalface of this campaign. What's your reflections on where we're at now?
I suppose it makes a lot more sense now to everybody, doesn't it? We have all the evidence. We have presented all the evidence. It was clear to us that if there was only to be one surgical hub, that the optimal location of that hub would be to be in Letterkenny. And now we heard from Minister Harkin on Friday that actually reading between the lines, and not even between the lines, but just listening to what she said there, basically was part of her commitment, or part of the deal done, I suppose, for her commitment to government, which is fine. That's okay. But people should have been honest about that from the start. But what that actually means is that because of a deal done with Larry's independence, the people of Donegal will now suffer. So that is what we'll have to, that's the campaign has changed, I suppose, to some extent now. It's clear to us now that the only show in town will have to be two surgical hubs, one in Letterkenny and one in Sligo.
Which could be very difficult to get over the line, especially when the ambulatory centre continues to be pushed as part of this narrative to ease any disappointment that might be out there. But we know medical professionals are on the record. This has been promised before and is many, many years away. And I think it was Mr. Michael Sugar said on Friday the hospital has about 18 months. So that is not a solution to where we're at. It is kind of unfortunate that this was never a medical decision then, really, because if Tony Canavan said his Canavan plan was that it was to go to Sligo. It failed before. They said, come back to us again. It's in the HSE's plans as Sligo, according to the minister, and it's in the programme for government agreement as Sligo. So all of the arguments you've been making, not me, on medical grounds seems somewhat futile. We were whistling in the wind.
Well, I suppose just as a point of clarity, the programme for government says that it's a surgical hub in the northwest. The decision of where that surgical hub lands still lies with the minister. And from communication with the minister's office over the weekend, they have confirmed again that it is the minister's decision to where the site of the surgical hub, if any, will be located. And it is disappointing, of course it is, that it has been made on political grounds, but that doesn't stop us fighting. I mean, it was really stark, I think, listening to Mr. Sugru, and a surgeon of his calibre, speaking and saying something incredibly scary about that the hospital has about 18 months left unless we do something about this. And I think that's who we should be listening to. We should be listening not to politicians, not to some of the HSE management past and present, but actually listen to the surgeon who's on the ground, who's telling you he can't operate, who's telling you that surgery in Letterkenny is a bit like an Aldi checkout. This is an analogy, that it's all backing up and you can't get it out unless you open a separate lane. And I think, the other part of it is that, but we've been here before with breast surgery in Letterkenny, and if it wasn't for Michael Subaru and the incredible campaign the last time, there would be no breast surgery in Letterkenny. So campaigns work, and they work when you're consistent with them, and they work when it's so blatantly obvious with the evidence. And that's the evidence that we'll be presenting to the Minister again tomorrow, including the evidence that we've gathered in the last 2 weeks since we've met her last.
The counter narrative is that surgical hubs aren't that big a deal anyway. I've heard it now from Tony Canavan. I've heard it from Marion Harkin. I've heard it from the Health Minister herself. People are talking about carpal tunnel syndrome and toenails and stuff. That's one side. And then I hear from people like you and Michael Sugrue and many others talking about how this could actually be, the saviour of services for Letterkenny, and maybe a platform for us to spring forward to maintain what we have and improve what we have. Explain to me how there's these two very different approaches or views on a surgical hub.
I suppose it's only now they're starting to say surgical hubs aren't a big deal when we say we want one. But they were lauding them in the press when they were giving them to everywhere else in the country except for Donegal. I think it's really important to understand why we're doing this, okay, and for the layperson on the street to understand why we're doing it. So we have better things to be doing. We have patients to be seeing, and that's what we want to do. We want to do the thing we're trained to do rather than having to campaign. But what this actually means is there's about 400 procedures that can be covered in a surgical hub. So it's not just carpal tunnels, it's removal of gallbladders, it's joint injections, it's eye injections, it's lots, there's 400 of them, right? Things that our patients are currently traveling to Sligo to get done. More importantly, perhaps, it's not just as bad as it is, our patients having to travel to Sligo, but it's also that we're finding it really difficult to recruit surgeons. And when you look, and I have, together with the Minister and with everybody else, in detail looked at the surgical rota for the last 6 months in Letterkenny. And what we're seeing is no day where people can perform surgery consistently. So we have surgeons sitting there who can't operate, and surgeons sitting there who have sick patients who want to bring them to theatre, who can't bring them to theatre because there's no space. So if you remove all of the elective stuff and take it out and put it in an elective unit, which is what the surgical hub is about, then it frees up theatre space. It also allows us to recruit surgeons because surgeons want to operate. That's what they're trained to do. And, what this actually means is if you don't, we have 3.5 full-time surgeons in Letterkenny, right, who aren't locums. That's, for the second busiest Model 3 hospital in the country, it's incredible, right? So that's 1 or 2 surgeons leaving away from the whole service collapsing. And it's important to articulate what that means. So if you don't have enough surgeons to cover a rota, that means there's no emergency surgery. So you'll have heard Anya Keating, Dr. Keating from the consultant in the emergency department say, that means that if she has a patient who's a car accident today in Letterkenny, that they have to be packed. What that means is putting loads of bandages on them and wrapping them up and putting them in the back of an ambulance and sending them to somewhere else, like Sligo, and an hour and a half or 2 hours up the road. Okay, which means that our patients are going to suffer somewhere in the middle of the gap, somewhere around Donegal town. They're going to suffer worse outcomes, right? What that means is if you have a bad outcome during delivery of a baby and you end up needing to have emergency surgery, same thing. You will be packed up in the back of an ambulance, and if you're lucky and you survive it, you might be treated in Sligo. So we're not saying this to be scaremongering. We're saying this, and we've heard that from the consultants across all the specialties in Letterkenny, is that unless we fight on this issue, and unless we keep our surgical hub and get a surgical hub for Letterkenny, we won't be able to recruit surgeons and are on the verge of collapse. And we don't have to look very far. We've told everybody multiple times, look across the border in Fermanagh. That's exactly what's happening.
When I'm listening to people, it's not always the obvious stuff. And the one thing I noted with the health minister, she kept wanting to talk about the Northwest. But we have specific challenges here in Donegal. And, there's a very big difference between someone living in Bundoran versus someone living in Malin or living in on Ironmore Island, for that matter. So I don't know how this conversation's going to go with the minister tomorrow night, because you're going there armed with evidence that proves that if Sligo and Letterkenny were both viewed equally, business plans for both, that the cards stack very, very favourably towards Letterkenny University Hospital in terms of the criteria for the location of a surgical hub. And then we have this elephant, this massive elephant in the room, that Larry's Independents have a commitment that it's going to Sligo. I'm certainly not giving up, but how do we progress it then from here? Because you're going to have to get it out in the open first and foremost, right? We're talking about 2 now, aren't we? Because you're not going to take it from Sligo. You could have told us this a couple of months ago, but we didn't know it was part of the government deal.
I suppose the first thing is the Minister for Health, this Minister for Health is highly educated. This Minister for Health is highly data driven. And this Minister for Health has given us a lot of respect so far. So we'll continue to operate in a space of respect. To me now, in my mind, the only show in town is that we probably need to have 2 surgical hubs, 1 in each. And there's definitely the work for it. I mean, we've data last week given to the health forum has shown us that about 5,000 of our patients with Donegal addresses are going to Sligo for their surgery. We have another 5,000 going across the border to Ballykelly. So we know that there's enough work in Sligo alone, in Letterkenny alone, to do it, never mind all the patients in Sligo. We're also talking about small amounts of money. Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, 65 million for a surgical hub, somewhere between 60 and 65 million, depending on who you speak to, for a surgical hub is not that much money in the grand scheme of things. In the OECD, we are one of the highest spenders on health per capita. And so we can get 65 million for both if it comes to it, if that's what it is. And, we said it multiple times. We said it again yesterday. We're not going to lie down. And we're not going to say, oh, that's okay. Sure, Marion Harkin was promised a surgical hub for Sligo. We'll just lie down in Donegal and take that. That won't be happening on this occasion. We'll be telling that to the Minister tomorrow as well. Look, she's in a political bind. I do think that because of what Marion has said, or Minister Harkin has said on Friday. But political bind or not, we're here to represent our patients. I'm not a politician. I'm a doctor, and I'm here trying to advocate for them. And so if it means taking patients to the street, it means taking patients to the street.
We might be heading that way. And if anyone's concerned that, Donegal wants more, let's remind people as well that we have 0.3% of the health budget for in excess of 3% of the population. So and 65 million is nowhere near bridging that gap. By the way, in case anyone's in any doubt, it is literally trying to drag ourselves up to something close to a level playing field. Don't forget, per 1,000 patients, how much more Sligo gets versus Letterkenny. And I think the proof here, Padraig, that this is not about taking anything from Sligo, but about us trying to campaign for ourselves here, is that, right, let's concede. 1 has to go to Sligo now, let's have 2. So it's not about, let's rip that from the jaws of the government deal and move the one from Sligo to Letterkenny. If it has to be 2, let it be 2.
It was never, Greg, about us versus Sligo. It was, if there's only to be one, put it in the right place. I'd be delighted. I mean, I'm from up that neck of the woods. I would be delighted if Sligo had its own surgical hub and that we would have one as well. But that's the conversation we'll be having with the Minister tomorrow. I suppose you're right, there has been chronic underfunding and neglect. And I think if you read the capital plan for the last 5 years, again, which we've done as part of this campaign, and you see the huge stream of things that have been happening in Mayo, that have been happening in Sligo, that have been happening in Portiuncula, and then you see the 4 things that are happening in Letterkenny, none of which provides extra clinical space, incidentally. And then they're lauding that they're ready to go to tender for their dialysis unit, when actually, in fact, that was promised in 2021 that it would go to tender and hasn't. So the proof is always in the pudding and in the eating. And that will be what, the proof will be when we speak to the Minister tomorrow and explain all those things to her, present all that data to her. We'll give her a chance to make the right decision, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, okay. But, further to your comments there about it not being about geography, the Minister said, I represent Leitrim, I represent Sligo, and I will make sure it gets a hub. And that's that. Right, okay. Padraig, thanks very much for your time. I do appreciate it. Have a good day. Best of luck with that meeting tomorrow evening. We look forward to maybe an update from you. That is Dr. Padraig McGuinness. He's a GP, of course, and a member of that 171 doctors and medical professionals campaigning for Letterkenny to be the centre chosen for a surgical hub. And what I find amazing is that you've got 171 people that we quite literally trust our lives with. If I go into a GP's office and they say jump, I say how high. If I was, God forbid, in a car crash and I'm brought into that ED, consultants, do whatever you like. I trust you implicitly. And they're telling us that this surgical hub is essential for the future of services at Letterkenny University Hospital. But I am to believe from politicians and civil servants that the surgical hub isn't all that, You don't really want a surgical hub. Why would you want a surgical hub now? Wait 8 years and we'll give you a bells and whistles ambulatory centre that we promised you before we didn't deliver, but trust us, this time you're definitely going to get that, and that's actually better. It's crazy, but thankfully we're now at a stage where we think for ourselves. We all think for ourselves. We look at the evidence, we look at the information, we gather it all together, and we all think for ourselves. And don't forget as well, our 7 Oireachtas members are all actively campaigning and supporting the 171 doctors and consultants. So this is there's political consensus here as well in this county. Okay, I'll take a break, come back with the weather, a few comments, and then we'll head for the news.
This summer, the Big Top is calling. Summer Sessions Letterkenny presents The Human League, live on August the 21st for one unmissable night. Plus special guests including Nick Kershaw and The Undertones. And it's your last chance to grab the final tickets at summer-sessions.ie. Also rocking the Summer Sessions stage, the Saw Doctors with special guests. That's The Human League, August the 21st in Letterkenny, under the Big Top. Follow Summer Sessions Letterkenny on social media for all the latest updates.
With MasterCard Priceless Experiences, the possibilities are endless. You could be front row, screaming every lyric, discovering new destinations, or a land of mouth-watering flavours. Register at priceless.com to unlock a world of priceless experiences. One place, endless possibilities. Priceless.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenney's. Find all your summer essentials from fashion and accessories to beauty and homeware at McElhenney's. Explore more in-store or shop online at mcelhenneys.com today.
Okay, not a great day today. Woke up, piddling rain. I could hear it hopping off the roof. Right, what is the weather forecast? I'm in the wrong place here. Right, okay. So what have we got for today? Mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain and drizzle, heavy and persistent at times. It'll become drier and brighter later. Highest temperatures of 17 to 20 degrees with light to moderate southerly winds veering northwesterly later. It's a mixed bag, going to be dry for a couple of days in the middle of this week. And then, showers dry. Maybe some indications of a drier spell of weather early next week, but we'll have to wait and see. A caller says we need to keep fighting for the surgical hub. We should be fighting on the streets for it. This is a disgrace. We need the surgical hub in Letterkenny. The O'Shea's in Sligo also fought for Sligo. Sligo got what they need. It's not the O'Shea's. Is it the O'Shea? No, I think I know who you're referencing. McSharry's, is it? No? But anyway, I think, and it'll be led out by the meds, the medical professionals. I think the time will come where people will be invited to go out onto the street if this part of the campaign is not successful. And I'll await with interest to see how many people actually do. Another comment here, as you say yourself, Greg, why didn't someone come out at the start of this saga and say it was part of a deal and already decided? All the wasted chat, all the coverage on the radio, the campaigns and doctor support, all for nothing. It also raises questions about TDs representing different counties in cases such as this, as there is clearly, and admitted by Ms. Harkin herself, a conflict of interest. The whole system is rotten. And also, too, there's probably government ministers and government reps in this county that in good faith were meeting with a minister and campaigning in a certain regard without the knowledge that this had been agreed as part of the Lowry deal effectively. So I'm sure they won't be too happy about that, because at the end of the day, it's not Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that will be seen to have delivered the surgical hub for Sligo. It's going to be independent Marion Harkin, part of the Lowry group, you see. I think we really need to look at the possibility of another election. Lowry has this government over a barrel and it's not working, plain as they say. Greg, the household limit for the Susie grant, I believe they are suggesting, has gone up to €644.15. So a lot of people will get a grant. Fingers crossed, the more the better. A caller says the government wants the people of Ireland to rely solely on the government. This is their agenda. Then they have control of the people. Another, we have to pay for the City West one way or other. The waste of taxpayers' money in this country is unbelievable yet. And all we have to scam the money off students. The City West is pennies in terms of just our surplus in this country, let alone the actual tax take. And I know that's tied into another conversation and another concern people have. But in terms of the City West, please, they don't need the money off students and students' families to pay for that. The money is there. And in fact, they'll save money compared to the the hundreds of millions they're giving a select few in this country to house international protection applicants, etc. Pearce needs to realise that, as Margaret Thatcher said, which is an interesting two names in the one sentence, education is not free, the taxpayer is paying it. There is tax relief on paying these fees for the taxpayer. Another, give them free education, but make them sign up for working for minimum wage for 2 years to serve the country in return for the free education. Another, the government wants the people to... Oh, I've just read that. Will this affect all the non-nationals who get free places and free education over Irish students? Worth digging into that. I'll double check that and clarify that for you. Right. That hour has just gone very, very quickly. But we've got so much more coming up in the next couple of hours. Let's take a break now, though, for the news and obituary notices. Don't go anywhere.
Ready for a summer of play? A summer-filled series of family feel-good get-togethers in the historic houses and gorgeous gardens of the National Trust. Enter a medieval masterpiece at Castle Ward. Choose your own adventure at majestic Mount Stewart. Make a beeline for Florence Court's 20th anniversary honey show. Enjoy lazy lawn games at Rowallan Garden. Take a beautiful boat trip on Blackwater River at the Argery. Or tee off at the Giant's Causeway. Ready for a summer of play? Search National Trust NI.
Show your colours at Brian McCormick Sports and Leisure Main Street, Letterkenny. Donegal t-shirts, polo shirts with matching shorts or quarter zips. Support our team, be proud and be loud with the latest jerseys. There's Donegal on-pitch jerseys, or try the latest training jerseys from only €45. Brian McCormick Sports, supporting Donegal GAA. Sponsor of Donegal Football All-County Division 1.
Just finished your Leaving Cert and wondering what's next? Join us at the TCS Careers Evening Wednesday 9th of July from 3 till 7 p.m. at the Tata Consultancy Services Global Delivery Centre, Letterkenny Business and Technology Park. Explore exciting career paths, meet the team, see your award-winning workplace. Your future starts here. Find out more at tcscareers.ie. That's tcscareers.ie.
The countdown is on for Carrigart Fest, July 11th to 13th in the Marquee at the Carrigart Hotel, featuring One for the Road, Bingo Loco Goes Country, and the Whistling Donkeys. Tickets on Eventbrite or from hotel reception. Why not stay over? Great accommodation and brand new restaurant await. Book now at carrigarthotel.com.
Live, on air, online and on the Highland Radio app. This is Highland Radio News.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. Donal Kavanagh at the news desk. There have been calls for theatre schedules to be looked at Letterkenny University Hospital. Speaking at a recent meeting of the Regional Health Forum, Councillor Kieran Brogan said hours should be extended into weekends to make space. Councillor Brogan says medical professionals want more time in the theatre and people in Donegal don't want to outsource another hospital for their surgery.
When we see that there's 2,066 surgeries that were outsourced last year in 2024, I think we need to look how we can explore extending the theatre hours, and if it means having some surgeries on Saturdays and Sundays, I think we need to explore every avenue available to us there as well, because the 2,066 patients that have accepted outsourcing, I'm sure most of them would be happier to have their surgeries done in Letterkenny Hospital.
And of course that comes following agreement between Health Minister Jennifer Carl McNeill and unions on a switch from a 5-day to a 7-day working week. Donegal County Council's AGM takes place later today, with Fianna Fáil set to take the chair. We understand Councillor Paul Canning will become Cathaoirleach, while Councillor Donal Manty Kelly will be his deputy. Meanwhile, the council has this morning adopted its draft tourism strategy for 2025 and beyond. The document wasn't adopted at a previous meeting because a number of key tourism sites in Donegal had been omitted from Fáilte Ireland's figures submitted for the document. A new draft was submitted today with indicative figures compiled by the council included. The sites affected were Head, Fannet Head and Slieve League. Regulations have been signed by the Justice Minister this morning, paving the way for the formation of local community safety partnerships in each council area. Minister Jim O'Callaghan says the safety partnerships will include a broader range of members than the joint policing committees they're replacing. Well, Councillor Jerry McMonigal was the chair of the outgoing JPC. He says this has been a long time coming and he's looking forward to seeing work start on the formation of a local partnership in Donegal.
We've been following the time lapse from the GPCs were done away with, and hope that the community safety partners will kick on quickly. But there's had to be a few changes to legislation. we were informed last week that it was imminent, so it's really good news today to hear that, and we'll look forward now to setting up the new community safety partnerships. It'll probably take about 6 weeks to inform all the other stakeholders and then get a meeting, so we'll probably talk in September.
Police in County Derry are appealing for information and witnesses following a report of arson in Coleraine at around 1:10 this morning. They received a report a petrol bomb had been thrown at a property in the Lisnabla Road area. The petrol bomb was thrown at the living room window, smashing it and causing damage inside. Another petrol bomb then ignited beside the front door. Police and fire service personnel dealt with the blaze. There were 3 adults in the property at the time. No injuries have been reported. The PSNI say they're treating this as arson with intent to endanger life. Tributes are being paid to 27-year-old Sarah Montgomery, the latest woman killed in the north. The pregnant mother of 2 was pronounced dead after she was found unconscious in a home in Donegal, County Down on Saturday afternoon. A 28-year-old man was arrested and is still being questioned. Tomorrow is the deadline for Leaving Cert students to make changes to their CAO applications. Around 90% of applicants make changes to their original choices between May and June. At 5 o'clock tomorrow evening, the portal will close. That means choices at that point will be locked in and cannot be changed. The number of long-term beds in care homes will need to increase by at least 61% by 2040. That's according to the latest report from the ESRI, which is saying more than 53,000 beds are going to be needed in 15 years' time to deal with an ageing population. Meanwhile, there's a call for the state to step in to run MEs in Ireland nursing homes. The Labour Party says patient safety and welfare can't wait for a HICWA review after an RTE investigates expose into poor standards of care. The party is putting forward a Dáil motion on Wednesday night to end big businesses' involvement in the nursing home sector. Health spokesperson Marie Sherlock says they're also making recommendations on the Fair Deal scheme.
So we are proposing changes to the Fair Deal pricing scheme, the introduction of minimum staffing levels, and ultimately ensuring that people who are in the business of providing nursing home care are doing so for the best of reasons and putting patient safety and welfare as a priority.
The weather forecast mostly cloudy today with outbreaks of rain and drizzle, heavy and persistent at times, becoming drier and brighter later. Top temperature 17 to 20 degrees Celsius, light to moderate southerly winds veering northwesterly later. And that's Highland Radio News. We're back with news again at 11 o'clock. In the interim, check all the latest news on our website, highlandradio.com. Until then, from the news team, good morning. The obituary notices for this Monday morning, the 30th of June. The death has occurred of Anthony Doherty, Main Street, Dunlow. Anthony's remains will repose at Midland's funeral home today from 12 noon until Rosary at 8 o'clock, followed by removal to his home, reposing there tomorrow from noon until Rosary at 8 p.m. Funeral Mass on Wednesday at 12 noon in St. Cronus Church, Dunlow, with interment afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. House strictly private, please, on the morning of the funeral. The death has taken place of Bridget Devine, Main Street, Lifford. Her remains are reposing at her home. Funeral from there tomorrow at 11:20 for Requiem Mass in St. Patrick's Church, Murlock, Lifford at 12 noon. Interment afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. Family time, please, from 10 o'clock tonight and before the funeral tomorrow. The Requiem Mass can be viewed live on the parish webcam. And the death has taken place of Mary Boyce, née McGarvey, 2 Pound Street, Ramelton, reposing at her home. Requiem Mass this afternoon at 2 o'clock in St Mary's Church, Ramelton, with burial afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. The Mass can be viewed on churchservices.tv. Family flowers only, please. Donations, if desired, to the Donegal Hospice, care of any family member or Patrick Sweeney, Funeral Director. For family information and more details regarding wakes and funerals, please go to highlandradio.com.
Hey there, looking for car insurance that's simple, fast and comes with a little extra? That's RedClick. You can save an average of €245 when you quote online. Insurance that's easy, insurance that's quick. Whenever you need us, you just need to click. Visit redclick.ie. Discount based on new private car policies from 1st November 24 to 1st February 25. Max discount €300. Apply before optional covers. Subject to minimum premium. Acceptance criteria, terms and conditions apply. Generali Seguros y Reyes Seguros SAU, trading as RedClick and Generali, is authorised by the General Directorate of Insurance and Pension Funds in Spain and is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland for conduct of business rules.
And you're very welcome into the second hour of the 9 till noon show. Some of your comments on what we've been talking about so far today. Hi, Greg. Was just listening regarding the student contribution, etc. I'm aware of the 3,000 annual contribution, but I'm confused now about fees. Is this extra needed, paid throughout the course, and how much? Well, I'm not too au fait with this. This is your fees at the start of the term, I believe, and they were 3,000. They were reduced to 2,000 for a big proportion of families, but they're back up to 3,000 again now. Minister Harkin is doing what every other minister is doing, and that is minding her seat for the next election. Did anyone out there see the programme on Friday night and listen to Michael Lowry and Ben Dunn? That programme answered a lot of questions for me. A old boys network is rife in this poor country of ours, says Anne. Again, thank you, but it's a real measure of the seriousness of the situation when doctors, consultants are so vocal. It's evidence-based. Yes, we have been politically and managerially neglected, believes that one listener. Good morning, Greg. I heard you mention maybe talking or taking to the streets over Surgical Hub. Never done so before, but certainly on board for this one. Fair play to our doctors for standing up for the people of Donegal and the hospital. I think if it has to happen, it will get tremendous support. And why might it? Well, firstly, we've talked extensively about it, so people, I think, understand that whilst maybe matters of health or surgical hubs or the hospital doesn't affect you now, if you're in good health, fantastic. But, you know, this is about supporting the staff and the workers down there to build a hospital that's resilient and, there for the future, all services and maybe more, and to bring services to the people of Donegal that perhaps maybe we've had to travel for before. Also, there is political unity in relation to this at this point, as far as I can see. Both the likes of Charlie McConnell, Pat the Cope Gallagher, they said they're very committed to a surgical hub for Letterkenny. The two Sinn Féin reps, Charles Ward, 100% redress, Senator Eileen Flynn, Manus Boyle, etc., all seem to be on the one hymn sheet. So, in other words, sometimes if one political party organises something, members of other parties don't necessarily want to take part in it, and I understand that fully. But if this is called, it will be called by the medical professionals, so it's apolitical, and there's cross-party support for it as well. So if it does happen, perhaps that's just the way it might be. Hi, Greg Rathmullen. What a beautiful buzzing place, but toilets a mess, bins absolutely filled to capacity and beyond. Could you get a reply from DCC on the situation? It's an age-old one. We certainly might try. Why does Greg shy away from having an opinion? There's two sides to the argument is hold hat. Where Gaza is concerned, there is a right and a wrong, and genocide is wrong. Kneecap are expressing the truth. Maybe Greg can't handle the truth. Maybe you can't listen or didn't hear. Sorry. I'm saying that I'm watching a music festival, and I'm not really sure how I feel. That's why I phrased it the way I did. But flags of different countries and political messages, I just want to see people singing songs. Do you know what I mean? And I would have grown up to listening to music where there was a lot of politics in it. Different types of music. There's always been politics in music. It's just very much now in your face that I have not said anything negative about Kneecap. I've not said anything positive about Israel, if the truth be told. So I don't know really where you're coming from or what your angle is on that text, but I understand it, I respect it, and I read it out. We need to talk about the impact of the fees on young people. They understand how much pressure that their parents are under, and they know that they might not be able to go to college. Not all families can afford college. I wonder, it's an interesting question because, young people are very switched on. I wonder, are young people saying, God, if I go down here, this is going to put wild pressure on mum and dad. I might let on that I don't really want to go to third level. I mean, I suppose it is bound to be happening. They think they're doing the right thing to save mum and dad, or mum or dad. I think it'd probably be even more complicated in a single parent household. Maybe they are sacrificing their education because mum or dad's under pressure. Greg, you're absolutely right. People don't like Donegal because we're doing well and because Jim speaks up. Let's keep the momentum going. However, I have some concern that if we play the first half like we did against Louth and Monaghan, our luck will run out. We need to start like the second half against Monaghan or Meath. Will make the final over Donegal. It's interesting because that's one of the questions I wanted to put to Brendan Devaney. It's fantastic when you can switch it on in the second half, but what happens if we have a poor first half and a team decides to keep the ball keep the ball from us, or I don't know, some tactical way to shut the game down for the second half. Now, maybe Donegal are that good, that quick, that we could turn the ball over and do what we've done in the last couple of games. But there comes a point where you can't keep relying on massive second half performances. So Brendan, as a former player, of course, and manager of GEA teams, it'll be interesting to get his insight. What did Jim McGuinness say at halftime, and how did it have such an impact? And I suppose the players know what's what. So what was going on in the first half, etc. Did anyone watch Glastonbury at the weekend? Chance calling for the death to the IDF or anyone should never be tolerated, especially at a music festival. Artists who engaged in this behaviour should be banned from playing live at festivals. I tuned in for light relief, not to listen or watch such propaganda. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in the same space, whereas I watched it just to, I would be the type that if I want to, the politics doesn't have to be the politics I agree with or disagree with. It doesn't mean I like to see it there because I agree with it, or I don't want to see it there because I disagree with it. It's just sometimes is there a space whereby you can just watch something and the flags are about fun stuff. But anyway, I'm not too bothered either. I work in the hospital, and I think the people of Donegal are ready for the street protests. And if the doctors decide that route, the day services is 2 theatres, and they're constantly not used because of the overflow of patients from ED using their beds. That's from someone within the hospital. And one quick mention, Letterkenny Memories will be held in the Station House Hotel, Letterkenny. It's this evening at 8 p.m. Everybody is welcome, by the way, to that event. Right, so what's coming up? We have in the last hour, Brendan Devaney talking sport, of course, GEA, but we also have Senator and Councillor Blaney, the two Blaneys, because the Blaney family, their life in politics is celebrating 100 years. It's a remarkable amount of time for one family to be serving the people of a county. Now, not everyone's going to agree politically with everyone all of the time, but I think most people can respect that takes a lot. So Senator Niall Blaney and Councillor Liam Blaney are going to be in studio to reflect on those 100 years and the people who went before them. And Donegal County Council is also marking the occasion on Friday with a civil reception. Is it a civic reception, Caroline? Civil reception. Civic reception, okay, just to mark the centenary. It's a milestone. If you've any comments in relation to that, 08660 25,000, and we want your views on the football as well. And we've got so much in between now and then.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till Noon Show on Highland Radio.
Unmissable deals at Evolve Clothing. Tommy Hilfiger jeans only €50. Chinos and jeans from just €10. Summer sale is on now at Letterkenny Retail Park or shop online at evolveclothing.com. Stocks won't last.
The 252 Kia offers are heating up at iMotors. Now's the time to drive away in a petrol, diesel or hybrid Kia with PCP and hire purchase from just 3.9% APR across the range. Choose from the Ceed, Stonic, Nero, Sportage and Sorrento. Order by June 30th and get a €500 Super Value gift card plus a free home charger with any hybrid. Smarter, cleaner, better value. Drive into summer today. Visit iMotors in Letterkenny or Malin.
iMotors, fearless generation.
Finance is provided by Bank of Ireland and is subject to lending criteria. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Ireland is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Failure to meet repayments may affect your credit rating.
Transform your living room with a luxurious, bespoke feature wall from Spratt Fireplaces, Newmills, Letterkenny. Our complete installations include built-in storage, electric fires, floating shelves and stunning finishes in stone, porcelain or marble. Each feature wall is designed and built in-house by our expert carpentry and stone masonry teams. No fuss, just flawless feature walls. Call 074 91 24144 or visit spratfireplaces.ie. Spratt Fireplaces, experts in heating, design and detail.
For the biggest names in perfume and aftershaves, visit McGee's Chemist Letterkenny. Dolce & Gabbana, Paco Rabanne, Carolina Herrera, Calvin Klein, Jimmy Choo and Burberry, Ariana Grande, Jean-Paul Gaultier, Vera Wang and many more. From timeless classics to celebrity favourites, there's a perfume or aftershave for everyone at McGee's Chemist Letterkenny and online at mcgees.ie.
Now, a Fine Gael TD is urging the Children's Minister to fast-track plans to cap childcare fees, I should say, at €200 a month. as new figures show parents across the country are paying on average €190 a week. The median fees in Donegal are €175.50. Deputy Curry joins me on the programme now. Good morning to you, Emer. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Greg, and good morning to your listeners.
Yeah, we were talking about the costs of this, that and don. We've learnt this about the cost of living measure for third level. If you've got a teenager in the house and a younger one, you feel like you're getting tapped every single which way. But we're focusing on childcare fees. So what do the figures show us, more broadly speaking?
So the figures are showing us that the average is 190 per week for childcare, and I got these figures through the department by asking relevant parliamentary questions. And you're right, in Donegal it's 175. It's at its lowest in Leitrim at 150 per week, and it goes up to €260 per week in Dunleary and Rathdown. In my own constituency, the average per week is about 230. And I think what this shows us, Greg, is the disparities across the country when it comes to fees. And we know that the programme for government commitment is to bring childcare per month to €200. And I get a lot of questions from constituents about how this is going to work for a roadmap. Just to understand, because as you say, there are pressures on families, and I think people want to plan and understand for the future. So in the programme for government, it has committed to an action plan to do just this. And I suppose as Fine Gael spokesperson for childcare, I'm keen to keep the pressure on there and to make sure that the action plan is delivered sooner rather than later.
Minister Foley said she's working on it, but how does what needs to be done to make this possible? Because we're talking about effectively cutting costs by a quarter on average. That's going to take a great deal of staff investment, etc. So, what might this action plan look like?
You're right in that it's going to take a lot of consultation and engagement with the sector itself. I think we have established that partnership is possible through the establishment of core funding, and therefore core funding, even though it's not a perfect model, and I'd be the first to point out where it needs to improve, but it does set out how the sector can work together and address the issues that are there. So for instance, this year the core funding will be increased, but as part of that there have been commitments to make it more transparent around fees and to work towards the introduction of a common fee structure. And we've already seen that fees have been frozen since September 2021. So there is work taking place, and it is about building on that.
30,000 new public childcare places are expected to be created or would need to be created as part of this plan. I don't know how many staff that sort of equates to, but I mean, is that doable? Are the people there? Is the money there to pay them?
So what you're talking about is the commitment in the programme for government to step into state-led facilities, which I am very excited about and have been pushing for, and that as well is to address capacity. So we can see how obviously fees differentiate across the country, but also so does supply and demand. And so the work that's happening within the department at the moment is a forward planning unit is being established out of a supply management unit that was already set up to look at the areas that may require investment. And the government is working on a plan in relation to state-led facilities. I have my own views on how I believe they should do that, because there are planning guidelines that exist that aren't working as effectively as they should, that would that look at the supply of new housing and then the supply of childcare places with that. So that is one part of it, I believe. but also we need to be looking at other ways of increasing capacity, looking at, say, school buildings, empty creches, places where childcare facilities can be built.
Okay, now you're at an advantageous position because much of what we're talking about now could be coming from an opposition party, but you are a Fine Gael TD, you are within, and you've got access, I presume, to Minister Foley. So you say things should move quicker. How quickly are things going to move then?
So what I am suggesting is that I know from dealing with parents in my constituency that it really is about the roadmap. The minister has said that the reduction to €200 per month will happen over the course of this government, and I think the action plan does need to be prioritised because, as we are covering here today, there are challenges for parents in relation to affordability and accessibility. So I believe that should be prioritised, and really even the outline of how the roadmap to €200 could be achieved would be helpful.
All right, thank you so much for your time. That's Emer Curry, Fine Gael TD and spokesperson for children. So the average weekly childcare bill, €175.50. Now, we have the lowest disposable income and some of the lowest incomes in the country. So, you know, the gap between what, say, for instance, and you know, maybe it's parents and the children. So, you know, the choice is one of the parents would stay at home, look after the children, or we pay the €175 childcare. And then what is the gap between what your income is and the €175? You know, how much would you be working for? And it's important to get out of the house, of course, and do your bit. But €175.50 a week is it's a lot of money, and that's at the lower end, believe it or not. But we have a Fine Gael TD calling on another Fine Gael TD or a Fine Gael government, Fianna Fáil government, to quicken things up there. 086 60 25,000 is the WhatsApp and text number, 086 60 25,000, or give us a call on 07491 25,000. By the way, if you are playing Radio Bingo, they weren't included in the last break. They will be included in the next. My apologies. They'll be going out shortly. Greg, the local Oireachtas members had to know about Sligo getting the surgical hub. It was in the programme for government. Well, it was for the Northwest's in the programme for government, so they were of the view, right, it's in the programme for government. Marion Harkin said Sligo was in the programme for government, but there's different information, so that's not the case. And then, of course, the business plan, the HSE spending plan, Sligo is the location within it. So I think there's a couple of things have got convoluted there, and I can understand, personally speaking, why local Oireachtas members wouldn't have known that Sligo was part of that deal. What is more important, music and entertainment or genocide? Is stopping babies' heads being blown up? The IDF are terrorists, aren't they? Anyone who yams about the reality of what's happening in the name of fake democracy and murderous ideology should get a life, says that listener there. Greg, I'm so disappointed in Minister Marion Harkin as a woman. I thought she had integrity, but will never give her a vote again. Well done for you. Well done to you for uncovering this. Well, I mean, if you live in Sligo and Leitrim, her integrity has gone through the roof because she's going to ensure that you get a surgical hub. And that's where most of her votes come from. Right, okay. Let's go to Connell now. Hi, Connell.
Good morning, Greg.
You're talking about care needs in the residential and home care setting. You think that we need a new way. So what has led you to arrive at this point of view?
Well, the ESRI report out this morning states that our over 85 population will double in the next 15 years, and that's not long. And our over 65 population is going to go up by 60%. And we need long-term nursing care from 30,000 to over 50,000 beds, and we need home helps from 30 to 50,000 as well hours. So, doubling the amount of hours at home. So what I'm saying is that I feel that we need to look at a new model. I mean, a number of years ago, I was at the McGilda Summer School, and a very prominent doctor, surgeon, lecturer said that care of senior citizens or elderly was about physical care, having people there. It wasn't always about medical care. It's just to look after the person for their needs in a home environment, but not necessarily medical. And I think the Donegal County Council, I think, should set up a task force and the HSE to look at how we could deal with elderly care, some elderly care at a localised level. I mean, I got a tour of the Shield Hospital there recently, and the rooms there are fantastic. And if you had rooms, maybe 8 or 10 rooms like that at a parish setting, and some staff, and also the people's own relations are so close to it that there's a combination of things. Not all people could be looked after that environment, but certainly for the future, if numbers are going to grow like that, then we have to look at a new model, you know.
Yeah, because just to recap some of the figures that you mentioned there, analysis by the ESRI said that long-term residential care beds and home support hours provided to the older population will need to increase by at least 60% by 2040, which is just around the corner. By then, 21% of our population will be aged 65 or older, and the population aged 85 and over will have more than doubled. And we already really, other than sort of hiring in from outside the country, we're already struggling to find staff to meet the needs that we have, and also to find funding. Because, the HSE budget in this area, Donegal, ran out quite some time ago. And there's, no additional home care packages, no additional home care hours. So we're already at a major disadvantage.
Yeah, well, I mean, the average in a state-run nursing home now, or one of the smaller hospitals, is about $1,650 a week, and that is only going to go one way increase, and they still haven't the numbers. The private nursing home care is cheaper, but even that, you will still need these places, but it's never going to cope with the future. I mean, I was involved in St. Shannon Centre in Ardra, an independent living centre that was opened in 2009, but it took us about 10 years to get it done. But a new model now is required at a parish level, say that you have something like a large bungalow with rooms in it, like the Shield Hospital, and sitting rooms and that in it, and have a strong local community involvement, like the GA or like the co-op, just have a community buy-in, because I think there's no alternative to a community buy-in with a growing elderly population. And I remember, I mean, 60 years ago, elderly people were cared for in their own homes when there was help there, but they're very primitive homes, no internal plumbing or anything. But they cared for them because there was help there. And that's what it's about. And if you have a local situation in a local parish, well, people are always in and out, and you'll get a strong voluntary, and that voluntary ethos is still very prominent. That voluntary thing is there, that people will be in and out, and their own friends can come in, and then you have a staff there that if somebody is looking for something or calling on someone, they're there in maybe 2 minutes,
my concern is though,
24 hours a day.
My concern is that we can look at where we're at now, and I would have great concern as to how we as a state treat our older people, be it in terms of health, acute health care or home care or whatever it might be, and also to just in there's a million different things whereby we're moving on and neglecting our older people, even in terms of technology or whatever it might be. It's great if we live longer, Connell. I mean, we'd love more of us are living longer, and we will. But also, it has to be a quality of life there as well. We don't want a subset of the population, 20% of the population that are existing. We have to make sure whatever we put in accounts for people living their lives.
Yeah, I think there's a strong thing at a parish level. If people are elderly and maybe incapacitated, they're in touch with the local situation all the time. Maybe they can go out to Mass on a Sunday and meet their friends, and, within distance of the church and the shops and that. And all this whole mental thing, I think we're tending to neglect that a bit, that if we sort of feel that we have high-quality nursing homes and people are away, 40, 50 miles from their own home, and when they go out that door, they're starting out coming back again. That's a huge change for somebody to make at that age, because they have to make new friends and everything. Whereas the friends that had a lifetime in their own parish, they're always going to be there, and they're going to visit them because it's easy to visit them. People are, for instance, going to Mass on a Sunday, and you have a centre beside the church. People that feel that that's part of their, religion as well, maybe to visit, but it all adds up to an inclusive situation of physical and mental care that can be dealt with at a localised level. Not all people will be able to be cared for that. You will still have to have nursing homes. You still have to.
And then there'll be people who
HSE.
choose to live in their own homes independently as well. It's about having options.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But-
I think that. I mean, I've been on your program several times about having a fair deal scheme for home care, like and houses are good, and a different type of fair deal scheme suited to the needs of different people. It's a combination of things. But I think I'm glad to give the opportunity to talk about it in your program. But I think Donegal County Council and the HSE, well, particularly the council, should establish a task force, because I think councillors are in touch with the local people. They should establish a task force to plan for what the ESRI has come out with today, because there are other statistics that come out, but they're not. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but what we
what's
do
gonna
know,
happen
what
here.
we do know though, is like we've got the predictions of in 2040 of the age of our population. The bottom line is we're in a situation at the moment where lots of people are not having any babies. And those that are having one, maybe two, but the big families seem to be almost a thing of the past now. We're losing quite a large chunk of our young population to Australia, America, etc. They may not return. Like, I'm concerned beyond 2040. We are actually going to struggle to have people of an age to care and support the greater number of older people that require that care and support. Like, that is where we're heading, and I can't see anything really in trends that's going to stem that.
Yeah, well, we will depend on people coming from other countries to work, and that'll be the reality. I won't be around at that time. I'm talking to you as a person who's 75 myself, but that's another day's work that people will have to be down the road. But for the moment, for the next 10 years, how do we address this issue and plan for 2040, which is only down the road? As I say, when we started the sheltered housing project in Ardra, it was 1998. We opened it in 2009. It took us almost 11 years to get it done, and that's the type of scale you're talking about. But if it takes 5 years to do things, but I think Donegal County Council should establish a task force about the ESRI report this morning as to where we're going with our elderly population and the increase, because Donegal have a bigger increase than any other county.
Mm-hmm.
And the HSE in combination with that. And it's no longer, and the community, it's no longer a case of each person and each government department in their own sort of box saying we do this, we do this, we do this. It's a combination of things, cooperation all the time, and look at a solution that best suits our elderly population at a localised level. Can we care for more of them in their own home? Can we care for any more of them in a sort of a centralised bungalow, maybe with about 8 or 10 rooms? We have a small staff there that's available 24 hours a day, and the input of the community and the local people as well.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Colin. I know it's something you're passionate about. It's not the first time we've spoken about it. It may not be the last either. Read the Hub promises to Donegal being manipulated by our 100-year plus Fianna Fáil Fine Gael government with power-hungry politicians. No surprises there, bit of a Freudian slip. All government TDs should resign their seats, but they don't over defective concrete, so no change there either. And again, we talked about that towards the end of last week. Resigning your seats, what does that actually achieve? As I say, there is an argument there that I listened to that you can battle from within. You certainly couldn't from without. Pat the Cope Gallagher is committed to seeking clarity from the Taoiseach and his office over the deal that was done, it seems, to have Sligo as the location for the surgical hub, though Marion Harkin is saying, I'm only making sure that what was in the HSE plan is put in place for my constituents, right? But we'll hear what, if anything, Pat the Cope Gallagher gets back from Micheál Martin on that. But if he were not in the party, he certainly would get very little, so we shall see. What time will we know what day Donegal is playing in the semi-final? The CCC normally meet about lunchtime. We'll bring it to you just as soon as we get it. Don't worry about it. It's amazing how quick we forget that these elderly people are the very people who made and sculpted us into who we are today. Yet we treat them as a burden on society, and that's it. That's what I was alluding to with our last guest there. What are we inclined to spend now to make sure our older people are better looked after when life seems to be moving and leaving many elderly people behind? A caller says, today's elderly are not what 50 years ago was. Many at the age of 80 and 90 are still very active. They just need better supports to stay at home, of course, but many are, 80, 90. Anyway, I'll come back to that. No, you're right, but there's also a greater number of people who are living to those ages now, and some with health issues. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Back with more after these.
It's time for Vision Ireland Bingo on Highland Radio.
It's Monday the 30th of June. You're playing for the daily prize of €1,000 on the green sheet. The reference number is S11. It's game number 27. The numbers are 77, 83, 50, 43, 71, 7, 85, 20, 70, and finally 30. Phone your claim to 9104833 before midnight, leaving your name, contact number and the name of the shop where you purchased your book, and we'll call you back the next working day. Get all your Vision Ireland bingo information at highlandradio.com.
A huge 3-day €1 million stock clearance marquee sale begins this Thursday the 3rd at McGinley's Furniture, Letterkenny. Sofas, beds, mattresses, dining sets, occasional furniture and more, all heavily discounted in store and even further reduced in the clearance marquee, where there's up to 70% off. It's for 3 days only, Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 10 until 6 daily, and it's first come, first served. So don't miss out at McGinley's Furniture, Portling Business Park, Letterkenny.
The Chadwick Summer Sale is now on across 37 branches nationwide. Save €100 on the DeWalt 18-volt brushless combi drill, now an incredible €329. Save €160 on the Kiri Cool Touch diverter shower, only €189. Pro Plus Classic push petrol mower, now only €199. Plus loads more savings in doors and floors, paint, garden accessories, bathroom products and DIY. Visit your local branch or shop online at chadwicks.ie. Chadwicks.
Let's get it done! At Eclipse Cinemas, Bundoran and Lifford Strabane, the stars shine brighter. This isn't just a trip to the movies, it's a VIP experience. Sit back in luxury as your favourite pizza,
yummy,
hot food and a cold drink are delivered right to your seat in any studio. But for the ultimate treat, step into the Director's Lounge, our most popular destination. Enjoy the film, enjoy the food and savour the experience. Only at Eclipse Cinemas, Bundoran and Lifford Strabane.
Okay, we're joined on the programme now by Junior Minister at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Healy-Rae. He's part of a group of independents who are putting pressure on coalition parties to abolish means tests for carers. This was a big topic in the lead up to the election, Michael, and you're keeping the pressure on, I suppose you'd argue?
Well, good morning, Greg, and to all your listeners. And what is happening at the moment, as you know, we're in a very tentative stage in government because the budgetary priorities are being lined up, and taking care of all the people in their own homes is a matter of utmost importance, because these people are saving the state billions of euros every year, because you know that an acute bed is costing anything up to €8,500 per week. And the analogy that I use all the time is, if a person was at home and if they weren't having some kind person taking care of them, and say for instance they were trying to do something they shouldn't be doing, and if they fell and broke their hip, well, that bed would cost €8,500 a week approximately. So imagine the savings in direct and indirect ways that people who take care of somebody, they'll actually do a great service for the state. They're kind people, but at the moment they're facing, first of all, a long wait in having their application processed, and then we have the means test. Now, the government recognises this problem, and as part of keeping the promises, because everything gets said during an election, and we'll do this and we'll do that and we'll do the other thing and we'll do the devil, but it's about keeping your commitments then after. So I'm glad that on Thursday this week the disregard for carers allowance will rise, and it's going to €625 for single carers. This is up from €450, and €1,250 for carers with a spouse or a partner, up from €900. So incrementally this is going to improve. But if we don't keep pressure on now, Greg, I don't want to see this matter being forgotten about, and I'm not saying that it would be, but just as independents that are part of this government and that are supporting the government and what they're trying to do. And yes, Greg, there are so many competing issues. You have the hospitality sector, you have housing, you have all the other very important matters. But at the same time, we can't forget the carers, because
so are you looking for the government? Yes, they are, and we've a very high rate of carers in this part of the world, of course. So are you looking for the government then to commit a time frame, I suppose, for means testing for carers to be eliminated? I mean, as you've mentioned, you're in a great position of influence or persuasion, one would hope. So is that what you're expecting in the next budget or before?
Well, you see, the government have already committed to this, because we're all signed up to supporting the programme for government. And the programme for government is very, very clear. It recognises the work that is being done, and it clearly states that this situation is going to incrementally improve. But again, it's about keeping pressure on, because if we don't talk up at this critical time, these days, these weeks, pre-budget, it is so important. And I just want to give you an example of things that I don't agree with. And this might be a small little bit controversial, but I just want to lay this out to you because it is important. Because at the end of the day, it's not the government's money, Greg. It's your money. It's the people that are listening to this programme today. It's their money runs the country. And you saw there in the last number of days, Minister James Brown pulled a contract for 500 houses for their construction. Now, people might say, well, why in the name of God, at a time, when housing is so important, why would the minister pull that funding? And why would he go against that? Well, I have to be honest and say I agree with him. And I'll tell you why. Because the costing was €1 million per unit. In other words, €1 million per house. Now, with the greatest of respect, no matter how urgent people's housing needs are, people that are waiting for a house today and desperately need it, they wouldn't actually agree, well, that house should cost €1 million, because that's wasteful. There's something wrong there. And that is why government have pulled that, and they're resetting and saying, right, we have to look at this again, because that's not being good for the taxpayers. Because at the end of the day, it is your money, and we have to be prudent and careful with it and get the best value we can for it and not waste it. Now, if the minister was very, easygoing or neglectful in his duties, he could say, all right, or let that off and let it cost €1 million per unit. But then he'd be criticised afterwards, because people would say, my God, how's a local authority house costing €1 million?
Yeah, of course, I get where you're coming from, and we've seen that in this county as well, where the councillors walked out of deals because the developer has tried to bump up the price, and they've said, no, this is our final offer, that's all we're paying. Then they've walked away from that. But we can't keep doing that either. Where are the developers and the contractors that will build these houses at an affordable rate? They can invest their money in Northern Ireland, where, the planning system is much more streamlined. Maybe they might get more bang for their buck, who's to say? But, at one stage where much to the cost of the taxpayer and potential with rents, we're trying to incentivise international money to alleviate the housing crisis. It won't help you in Kerry, O'Mean, Donegal, but anyway, it will in Dublin and Cork and Limerick perhaps. And then at the other side, when we're pulling out of deals that might deliver affordable housing, do you get where I'm coming from? The system seems to be getting more messy and convoluted than more streamlined.
It does, and everything you've said, you're 100% correct. But the Taoiseach has been very clear about this, and I know there are people in opposition and who jump up and down and say, oh, we shouldn't actually be relying on any what I would call private funding for providing housing, but that's not going to work. The state is not going to be able to solve the housing crisis on their own, and the Taoiseach recognises this. Everybody in government recognises this. The only people I hear saying that it shouldn't happen is opposition, but it's very easy to say that. But you need private money as well, and we have to make that sensible as well, because if they see that it's not sensible for them to invest money into housing, they won't do so, and the crisis will only get worse and worse. And if you look at in your area was very, very hit with what I would call the pyrite scandal. And even though you might say Donegal was very far away from me, the people that were directly involved, they know that I listened to their stories at that time, and I very much took it on board. I was in opposition at the time, but I highlighted it, I spoke in the Dáil on it, and I was saying these people need assistance, they need support, and I am glad that an awful lot of progress was made in regard to that, and I really am so grateful to the people, the organisers, the people who came to Dublin, who protested, who were so strong in advocating for those very, very nice people, and I just want to remember them today because they were so nice, and I was so taken with their stories, and to see their beautiful homes crumbling underneath them every day, it was an awful thing to happen. Those very, very nice people.
Okay, well, indeed, we still have a way to go in that. Can I just ask you one question? And I don't want to in any way. I'm not trying to ambush you because the answer is I just simply don't know. But we were speaking to Minister Marion Harkin on Friday, and she says part of the deal to support the government was the follow through and a commitment from the HSC to locate a surgical hub in Sligo. I don't expect you to be across anything. I'm just asking on the off chance, and I might have mentioned this beforehand if you could have checked it out. Are you familiar with that story at all, or that forming a plank of the part of the agreement to support government?
Yes, I am, and what I can tell you about Minister Harkin's work and her involvement in this issue, she has been what I would call ferocious in her work ethic in highlighting this issue and trying to do what is right, and she has been an awful strong advocate about this issue, and I know because I hear it going on. I'm not directly involved in that myself, but she is, and she's doing what I would call ferocious work and is using her position in supporting government at trying to highlight this and trying to get it prioritised, and I commend her for her work on that because she is very strong on it, and she is working diligently in trying to help her constituents with regard to this and many, many other issues.
Could some people, if they want to, and I know people don't like the word, frame it as a goodie? In other words, that this was, this was one of those potential red lines for the region to secure that support for the government? I don't like that word, but it's the word that's being
Well, you know, you can call it what you like, but what I call it is people doing their work. And Minister Harkin, when she would have been approaching her issues as that she wanted highlighted and what I would call red line issues, everybody has those. And people talk about parochial issues and that, it should be about the bigger picture. But at the end of the day, all politics is local. And if you don't take care of people in your locality, and if you're not an advocate for them, they're the people who go out and support you at the end of the day. And people have a choice when they go out to vote. They see who's working, they see who's delivering. And in the case of Marion Harkin, she is what I would call good value for money, because I actually sit alongside her every day, and her work ethic is second to none. And she, of course, would have been fighting and advocating for the priorities that were important to her, as we all would have been as individuals. And there is nothing wrong with that. And you can call them special concerns, you can call them what you like, but at the end of the day, all we're all trying to do is what's the best for people. And the way I word it down here in Kerry is, and I'm sure your politicians in Donegal would think the same thing, or I hope they do anyway. I know Miss Harkin would anyway, and that is, we are servants of the people. We're there to work for people. We're there to do our best at all times, whether it's with regard to this, because, for example, the carers issue. I know that Marion Harkin has been very, very strong on this issue, and that is why it's in the programme for government, and there is a commitment by government to incrementally improve the situation for carers. And to people in Donegal today and throughout the rest of the country who are providing care, government recognises that yes, you are saving the state billions of euros. You actually can't quantify it, and will I tell you why you can't quantify it?
Mm-hmm.
If we can't treat older people with dignity and respect, and if we can't take care of them, well, then we're an extremely poor society, because these are our lovely people who brought us into the world. They could be our parents or our grandparents or our aunties or uncles or friends up or down the road. And we have to be, it's our duty to be nice and caring of those people and calling into a person's home or being there with them to support them and keep them out of hospital. Because, yes, when something acute happens to you and when you need medical care, you need medical care. But an awful lot of people, they don't have to be in a nursing home. They don't have to be in a district hospital or in an acute hospital if you can stop them having an accident or an incident. Of course, when people get sick and they're getting tired and burnt out, well, they need the specialist services of doctors and nurses.
Yes.
But an awful lot of the time, they need people to come in and take care of it. Could be, working in conjunction with community nurses, changing dressings and making sure that people have their medicine and taken to the doctors, and the simple things that people need done for them, that as they get older and they can't drive and they can't, they can't do the household things that need to be done, and watch out for them.
Yeah, indeed,
and that
Michael.
service
Listen, and of
is
course,
invaluable.
the SRI showed us this morning that we're probably going to be relying even more on carers as the population ages. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. Junior Minister Michael Healy-Rae, Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. A lot in there, particularly confirmation of that news we carried for you on Friday. If there was any doubt or confusion, I think that's fully clarified now.
A public interest message from Donegal County Council. EPA reports in recent years have identified that some rivers in Donegal have been seriously impacted by toxic effects from pesticides, including sheep dip. Donegal County Council would like to remind farmers, contractors and gardeners of the need to follow best practice when using these products. Firstly, read the product label carefully. Avoid spills, stay well back from open drains, rinse empty containers 3 times into the sprayer or tank, and don't spray if it's windy or rain is forecast in the next 48 hours. Follow Teagasc advice on safe disposal of spent sheep dip, which should never be released into any watercourse. Donegal County Council, protecting your environment.
If the medical experts get it wrong, everything changes. From misdiagnosis or delayed diagnosis to surgical injury or even poor treatment, all have physical, emotional and financial consequences. We're here to help. So if your treatment didn't go according to plan, speak to our experienced medical negligence team at McElhenney and Associates. Find us online or call 074 917 5989. McElhenney and Associates Solicitors, Stranorlar. In contentious business, a solicitor may not calculate fees or other charges as a percentage or proportion of any award or settlement.
I had problems with my knees for about 7-8 years. I think I'd give Kingsbridge 5 stars just because of the support and help that they gave me before and after the surgery. I was a public patient and the HSE reimbursed the cost.
Republic of Ireland residents can get rapid access to cross-border surgeries at Kingsbridge private hospitals in Belfast and Derry, with medical costs reimbursed by the HSE. Find out more at kingsbridgeprivatehospital.com/cross-border. Kingsbridge, your fast track to 5-star care. Terms and conditions apply.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenney's. Find all your summer essentials from fashion and accessories to beauty and homeware at McElhenney's. Explore more in-store or shop online at mcelhenneys.com today.
Okay, so let's see what the weather forecast has in store for us. And mostly clouded today with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Heavy and persistent at times. It'll become drier and brighter later. Highest temperature 17 to 20 degrees with light to moderate southerly winds veering northwesterly later. In relation to the carers allowance, a caller says if there were no means test for carers allowance, it means that somebody earning $500,000 a year will be entitled to carers allowance. There should be a cut-off point of what you're allowed to receive if you're a higher earner. I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. I'm not sure if you can do things like that, but I do think, there's no point handing money to people that don't need it. For those with higher dependency or complex medical needs, these facilities should provide comprehensive medical and personal care as well as social and recreational activities. Very often they're just a ticking box and provide the minimum of care. It's no wonder the elderly are afraid of ending up in there, and you hear cases of people being put to bed at silly hours or silly o'clock, and that's no way to treat our older people. Don't worry about our seniors. The government will introduce euthanasia like they've done in England. Irish governments always follow England's laws. I'm not sure the uptake would be at the point where it sort of really affect the overall increase in our older population, but I understand where you're coming from. A caller says, I'm a rapid response vehicle driver and a mad keen Donegal supporter. There's going to be a problem for Tyrone or Donegal. The Kerry-Tyrone game is going to be moved to the Sunday because it's more high profile, with Donegal versus Meath being played on Saturday the 12th of July. Now that is him or her supposing. Driving through the north on the 12th of July will be tricky and a nightmare for those travelling. The GEA needs to seriously look at the chaos that will be caused on the roads. Okay, it's an interesting insight. We don't know the dates for the games yet, Caroline, do we? No, it hasn't been announced. That's just a listener presuming it's okay. Yep, thank you. It's amazing how quick we forget that those elderly people are the very people who made and sculpted us into who we are today. Indeed, I read that earlier. Today's elderly are not like they were 50 years ago. I read that one too. My apologies. I'll put that back in the unread pile. A caller says, as a hemochromatosis patient, an urgent need for blood at the banks, and now there are in Donegal this week. It's a great chance to give blood. This can be done 3 times a year instead of doing it to LUH or your doctor where the blood is dumped. I'm not sure that's... Okay, right, I understand. This is where you remove your blood, isn't it, to address the iron levels. Okay, I get you. Yep, indeed, there's a nationwide blood shortage. We never know when we might need it. If you're on the list, or maybe you're a hemochromatosis patient, maybe now is the time to offload the blood that maybe you don't need and help others in the process. Dr. Sugru said health is more important than politics. Now it's been shown politics is more important than people. That's one person's point of view. Right, Brendan Devaney will be joining us. Senator Niall Blaney and Councillor Liam Blaney will be joining us to mark 100 years of Blaney's in politics. That and so much more besides after we take a break.
Crawley Distillery Visitors Experience is celebrating its 3rd birthday on Friday the 4th of July, and you're invited. Join the crack at 3 p.m. for a special toast and your chance to win a bottle your own experience. Plus, enjoy 50% off tours on the day only with code 3years online at thecrawleydistillery.com. Enjoy entertainment, special offers and a warm voucher for all. Crawley Distillery. Experience the spirit of Donegal.
This summer, fuel up for your holiday adventures with Certa and Adon the Little Dragon. Every time you fill up at a Certa forecourt or depot, you could win great weekly prizes, from fuel vouchers to your very own Adon Teddy. And you may also be in with a chance to win a luxury family break at Fota Island Resort, worth €2,000. So don't miss out. Fuel up for your summer adventures at Certa. For details and T's and C's, visit certaireland.ie/summer.
Monster Bingo every Tuesday night at Mulroy Woods Hotel. €3,300 must go with €1,000 on the last page. Doors open 7:30. Bingo starts at 8:30. That's Monster Bingo this and every Tuesday night at Mulroy Woods Hotel, Milford.
Get ahead of back to school this year at Dunnes Stores. From prepping for their very first day to refreshing their uniform, now's the perfect time to shop schoolwear for the adventures ahead. Pick up a 3-pack of playproof polos from just €5 and knitted school jumpers from just €3.75. Stock up on essentials like Easy Care joggers from just €5 and sweatshirts from €3.75. Back to school at Dunnes Stores. For little ones with big schedules. Shop in-store and online now. Terms and conditions apply.
With all the stories that matter across the Northwest, it's Greg Hughes on the 9 to Noon Show on Highland Radio.
And it is great to be with you at 11 o'clock. Let's get a news update and welcome into studio Donald Kavanagh.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning. Donegal County Council's AGM takes place later today with Fianna Fáil set to take the chair. We understand Councillor Paul Canning will become Cathaoirleach while Councillor Donald Mandy Kelly will be his deputy. Meanwhile, the council has this morning adopted its draft tourism strategy for 2025 and beyond. The document hadn't been adopted at a previous meeting because a number of key tourism sites in Donegal had been omitted from the Fáilte Ireland figures furnished to the document. A new draft was submitted today with indicative figures compiled by the council included. The sites in question were Mannon Head, Fanet Head and Slieve League. There have been calls for theatre schedules to be re-examined in Letterkenny University Hospital. The call from Councillor Kieran Brogan comes after the Health Minister said agreement has been reached on a 7-day working week, and he says theatre hours should now be extended into the weekend to make space for more procedures. Councillor Brogan says medical professionals want more time in theatre and people in Donegal don't want to outsource another hospital for their surgery. Police in County Derry are appealing for information and witnesses following an arson attack in Coleraine. At around 1:10 this morning, reports were received of petrol bombs thrown at a property in the Lisnabla Road area of the town. A petrol bomb was thrown at the living room window of a property, smashing it and causing damage inside. Another petrol bomb ignited beside the front door. 3 adults in the property at the time got out without injury. The PSNI say they're treating it as arson with intent to endanger life. Regulations have been signed by the Justice Minister, paving the way for the formation of local community safety partnerships in each local authority area in the country. Minister Jim O'Callaghan says they'll include a broader range of members than the joint policing committees they're replacing. While the outgoing JPC chair in Donegal, Councillor Jerry McMonigal, says this has been a long time coming and he's looking forward to work starting on the formation of a local partnership here. Plans by government to reverse the reduction in student fees are being criticised. They were cut by €1,000 last year, but it's reported Higher Education Minister James Lawless is now planning to reverse that move. On the 9 till noon show this morning, Deputy Pearse Doherty said with such a large surplus available to government, rather than reducing the reductions, they should be in fact increasing the reduction with a view towards scrapping the fees completely, as is included in the programme for government. And we're back with news headlines again at 12 noon.
Thanks, Donald. Back after the break.
Organ donation saves and transforms lives. A change in Irish law means that if you are an adult, you will now be considered an organ donor when you die. The choice to become an organ donor is yours, but it's important that your loved ones know your wishes. A register is available for those who would like to opt out of organ donation. Visit hse.ie/organ donation. Or call HSE Live on 1800 700 700 to find out more. From the HSE.
086 60 25,000 is our WhatsApp and text number, or give us a call on 074 91 25,000. We're joined on the programme now by Brendan Devaney. You good to go, Brendan? How are you keeping?
Good to go. How are you, Greg? All the best, man.
Great to have you with us. Right. A game of two halves. What was said at half time? I don't know. How can you put such a rocket up such a team in such a fashion?
Oh, listen, it's great, but it ended the way it did, Greg. Yeah, listen, I just would be so disappointed if we went out of the championship not playing well. I think, in sport, you can handle defeats if you play well and, you're beaten by what you call a better side. But we obviously were very poor first half. And I was texting Jim on Sunday just saying, I'm still trying to digest this, but whatever you did at half time, unbelievable, Greg. I've rarely seen a game change in terms of one team really dominating another and a complete flip in the second half. I mean, some of the stuff when you think about it, for us to concede 115 in the first half was crazy, and then we ended up scoring the same in the second. But, to restrict them right up until the last kick to 3 points, if you had said any of that at half time, I would have said, that's just not possible. So the game, just in terms of the lads lifting the intensity, and much like the Louth game, once we got to grips with it, we just absolutely destroyed Louth. We did the same to Monaghan. I couldn't believe. I thought there'd be more about Monaghan, but you could see our middle players, our main players, our experienced players just took control of the game, and then Monaghan just didn't have players like that in their ranks. And it was one of the best second halves I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was remarkable, but we can't keep relying on that though, can we? Because you go in against another team who sort of can, resist an onslaught and come back. And we've seen some of that at the weekend, particularly with how Meath played, who we play next. You can't, we're going to have it closer at half time. We can't keep doing the same thing, can we?
Well, it was still close against Louth. Listen, every game's different on its own merits. Were the lads a wee bit jaded or tired in the first half? Did it take them a while to get going? You got to think about the game on Sunday. By Friday they're getting on a bus to Dublin. That's not really a recovery day. So, and I know the lads didn't want any of that brought into the mix, but we certainly were way out of sorts first half. Defensively, we were so far off it. Even the brilliance of our kickouts just weren't the same as it had been. And you just looked at so many aspects of our game weren't right. And then in the second half, we kicked into gear. So, listen, Meath were poor themselves in the first half. We had a lot of bad chances, missed. It was a really strange game because I thought Meath Galway was going to be one of the shootout games end to end. And it was really a really disappointing, terrible first half. I think there was 20 minutes and it was 2 each. And I was like, what am I watching here? So a lot of things went against what we thought at the weekend. Donegal's first half performance, Certainly Galway, we thought would up it in the second half. Meath were well able for it. A lot of people said Armagh squad in midfield with all Kerry's issues would have been too strong. It wasn't. So, Dublin and Tyrone was a very difficult game to call, and so be it. Tyrone pulled away late on. This is a rebuild for Dublin, so no one could call Dublin. Donegal came through, and probably of the fancy teams, because Dublin and Tyrone were 50-50. Donegal was the only team that was expected to won in the other couple of games. So that's football, Greg. But I think kind of taking on board what happened in the Monaghan game isn't really important. What is important now is that Donegal look at Meath's wins, particularly over Kerry and Dublin and against Galway. Look at their strong points, look to nullify them, get our rest and build up to semi-final. But listen, Greg, if you had to say to Donegal fans, pre-championship, Meath semi-final, they'd have taken their hand off. So listen, phenomenal to be there, and it's going to be a great couple of weeks build up.
But Meath might see Donegal as just the latest big scalp.
Yeah,
we have to be careful.
Listen, I think Donegal will go into the game still as slight favourites. They will be favourites. That's just because the experience we have around the team now. People will say automatically, they beat Dublin, they beat Kerry, they beat Galway. Listen, they beat a Dublin team, as we've seen, which is in rebuild. They were there to be beaten. They'd taken them out of Croke Park, and it was a game, looking back at it now, that Meath had every potential to win. And I know it's all right saying it in hindsight, but the Kerry team that they played had already qualified. They were missing 6 players in the day, and Meath really just got about them, and Kerry weren't ready for that battle. The Galway team that they beat has had issues all season, not playing the Galway side we've seen the last couple of years. So, yes, they're here. They've beaten those teams, but I don't think any of those teams were at the peak of their powers. And I expect Donegal, with basically a full squad now, you see Jason McGee coming on the last day adding to the game, McBurdy coming on fire, and I think the way Donegal are moving now, they have so many match winners in their squad, and everybody's just building up to this moment. And at last, to say we have a week's break, but we have 2 weeks break and a proper week to kind of rest and then build up to the big game.
Not that it matters now. I'm only asking in case it ends up being a factor in a semi or even a final. Have you any concerns about how the Meath Galway game finished? The ball being kicked out whilst there was time on the clock. And I know the clock doesn't necessarily stop when the ball's out of play at other parts of the game, but I just was watching that and I thought that game needs to be able to be restarted, because you should have one sequence of play, either a continuance or a restart of play after the Claxton goes. And as I say, who cares now really? But I just wonder if it was us in a semi or a final, we'd been very, very unhappy potentially. What have you a view on that?
Yeah, do you know what? I had to pull myself away from the actual live game because I was managing unions yesterday, because most of the management team were on holiday, so I had to step back into a bit of banister yesterday. But when I left that game, Galway had just got their second goal in control. They coughed up very poor second goal for Meath, in terms of having possession, got their pocket picked. Like, that should never happen. And that was the big turning point in that game. But I just seen it back then in the highlights now. People were telling me that there was a lot more time on the clock on TV, because I put it up on the iPlayer and there was literally a couple of seconds left, but people were telling me there was 40 seconds left.
No, it wasn't 40. Yeah, no, it wasn't 40.
TV. Now,
yeah.
If you look at it back in the iPlayer now, Greg, it's down to a couple of seconds. But I was talking to somebody this morning about this. Whether it was a second or 40 seconds doesn't really matter. If the ball goes out of play and the klaxon hasn't gone yet, then surely you have to be allowed that restart, because it can't come down to you retrieving the ball to kick it. Because if somebody hits the ball over the stand and you can't find the ball, you can't be factoring.
And also clearing the players out the required distance, when they've got 30 seconds. So effectively, you could say the game's over at 69-30. And it just doesn't settle well with me. I think there should definitely be one sequence of play after the klaxon, whether it's a continuance or a restart.
Technically, Greg, if your goalkeeper then decided to waste time, which is game time, he could take a yellow card and waste, by the time the ref books him, that's another minute. So it's ridiculous to think that getting the ball to kick it out is the same time as, game time. So that had to be stopped there. And I know everybody started celebrating. And as I see it there definitely was, it doesn't matter if it was 1 second, right? There definitely was time on the clock. Galway should have been afforded the restart, and we could have had a different outcome.
But I think that needs a rule change, though, doesn't it? Because the clock doesn't stop because the ball goes out of play, per se, right? Unless the referee indicates, But I just think if it's within the rules now and there's nothing that there was nothing wrong, they need to change it because, as I say, you might as well then just say the game's over at 69-30.
Yeah, and I can understand in general time, Greg, I suppose in the game, the ball goes over the sideline. You got it back, it's a second or 2 seconds. It's silly that you can't keep stopping it. But if it's the very, very last play before the klaxon goes, then the klaxon has to have different rules around it. As you said, they say, right, there still is a second or 2 seconds or a minute, whatever it is, that ball has to be kicked out again. And on the very last kick of the game or the very last play, the ball has to get back into play because it's unfair to do it any other way.
Yeah, and I just think it could rob a team of... it already has arguably robbed Galway of an opportunity, but it could be in a much more serious situation. So Tyrone, were they good against a Dublin on the rebuild? Dublin seemed a bit neutered, really.
Yeah, listen, I stayed for just after half-time and that, Greg, to watch it live. We're always worried about getting out into our cars and getting down the road. Two of my sons up at the game with Trassa, so they, we lads will last a game and a bit.
You don't want to push it.
They're actually on the phone during the Tyrone game. But I was sitting watching. Yeah, Greg, listen, again, it was a very poor match from the part I've seen of it. And of course, Tyrone sprung to life at the end and pulled away from Dublin. Of course, Conor Kellahan didn't start, came on, and still looked a bit out of sorts, Greg. So, listen, fair play to Tyrone. They're building. Very hard to read into either team. Both teams have been very up and down in the championship in terms of games and that. But listen, you're in a semi-final now.
Unbelievable.
Obviously, Kerry looked really good in terms of their game because, as I say, they went down as underdogs, amazingly for Kerry in a semi-final. That's how much of a season that they have had. And of course, missing Barry Dan O'Sullivan and Jeremy O'Connor, the two main midfield men. And because of Armagh's power at midfield, you really thought that they might squeeze and put the pressure on the kick out. But I think Kerry had been bitten from that Meath game and taken a lot of abuse from ex-players and people out there. And I would say that dressing room was pumped to a man. And I suppose that was a danger for Armagh. But I just thought Armagh, they like the kind of battle. I thought they would have risen to it too. But listen, the quality and the ability of Kerry came to the top. And I suppose that's a bit of an ominous sign because there's no doubt in talent in this Kerry team. They often get undone by teams getting about them and tactics. But listen, they had an answer for everything and fully deserved their
quarterfinal. We have tactics that we can get about them, but we'll not overlook Meath. So Brendan has reaction from the Donegal team and management from Saturday, and of course the guests to pull all that into context and discuss the weekend's action. All-Ireland winner Martin McElhinney, Monaghan legend Conor McManus, and top GA correspondent with the Irish Times, Colm Keys. That's all on the DL debate tonight, just after the 7 o'clock news, and then available for you to podcast whenever you wish. Brilliant stuff, Brendan. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day.
Appreciate it, Greg.
Chat to you soon, buddy. All right, take care of yourself. Right, let's take a break.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till Noon Show on Highland Radio.
It's midsummer markdowns time at McElhinney's department store in Ballybuffet. Enjoy up to 25% off your favourite designer brands across fashion, accessories, home and much more. Discover top offers and unmissable deals in store from Monday to Saturday or shop online at mcelhinney's.com today.
The 5th Letterkenny Blues and Roots Festival takes place from Thursday the 3rd to Sunday the 6th of July. 4 days of great live blues, roots and folk performances, featuring artists from Ireland and around the world. Over 70 gigs in 13 different venues, plus street entertainment on Saturday afternoon. Don't miss the Letterkenny Blues and Roots Festival from the 3rd to the 6th of July.
It's been 10 years of the best, you'll never guess what, texts. 10 years of I wish you were here video calls. 10 years of businesses shouting, we got our first sale. And for 10 years in a row now, Vodafone have won Ireland's best mobile network, helping you stay connected to what matters most. Vodafone. Together, we can. Certified by Umlaut. See Vodafone.ie for terms.
A huge 3-day €1 million stock clearance marquee sale begins this Thursday the 3rd at McGinley's Furniture, Letterkenny. Sofas, beds, mattresses, dining sets, occasional furniture and more, all heavily discounted in store and even further reduced in the clearance marquee where there's up to 70% off. It's for 3 days only, Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 10 until 6 daily, and it's first come, first served. So don't miss out at McGinley's Furniture, Portling Business Park, Letterkenny.
Highland Radio Time Checks brought to you by EirGrid, the operator and developer of Ireland's electricity grid. EirGrid, powering up communities, powering up Ireland. The time is?
The time's at 11:16. Jim McGuinness is in an RTE documentary tonight, by the way. It's episode 4 of Hell for Leather, the story of Gaelic football. It includes a piece on Jim McGuinness's involvement with the Donegal GEA team. It's on RTE 1 at 9:35, Monday the 30th of June, so that is today. I'm joined in studio by Councillor Liam Blaney. Good morning, Liam. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning, Greg. Thank you very much.
And also Senator Niall Blaney.
Good morning, Greg.
Do you row much?
Always.
It's a brotherly thing, is it?
It's probably a family thing, yes.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
I don't think we see enough of each other to have to get aroused now.
Yeah, but that's what I do with the siblings I don't get on terribly well with. I just limit the amount of time I spend with them. But do you be politically on the same page, or do you know, get-togethers? Do you have? We're not talking about the issues. I mean, more generally. Do you know that sort of way?
I think more generally we're steeped in politics, but up in politics, and we all have such strong political opinions. So of course we have a difference of opinion, and we air them very vociferously with each other. Absolutely, but still your family. And
well, that's healthy, isn't it? I mean, you want to be able to. You have to be able to do that, because it's the same in any family, and it'd be strange just because you're involved in politics if you didn't have. If you didn't have that. This Friday, July 4th, the Blaney family will celebrate 100 years of continuous political representation on Donegal County Council. Now, I mean, that's a remarkable achievement. I mean, that's the state, the lifetime, effectively.
Yeah, I think there's maybe one other family in the country that'll celebrate maybe next year. So one or two in the country. So it's a massive milestone. And I suppose we're lucky and inherited what we inherited. And I suppose coming here this morning, I was thinking up the road, my mother probably should be here because she's 60 years around Rosnakill this month. But yeah, it's quite an achievement.
And of course, when you're part of a sort of a family legacy, Liam, do you think about it? Does it put more pressure on you, less pressure? Do you know? Did you feel, not as much now because you're well established, but you know, entering politics, did you feel you had to work harder to prove yourself, that you weren't just in there because of your name, or does that factor in?
Well, at times you may think about it, but generally, no, you wouldn't think about it. Whenever I entered politics first, I didn't intend to go into politics. And after Neil died in 95, there was a by-election in 96, and my father ran for that and failed to take the seat, and in 97 he took it. So in 1999 he was standing down for council, and we had a meeting in the house, and it was decided that Niall would be the person who was running for politics at that time, because I had no interest in him, although I'm the elder of the two. I know I don't really look at Greg, but
you're older than him.
And no, I wasn't. I was the farmer in the house, and I did all the work in the background, and I wasn't one to be out front at all at any time. So, you know, I didn't. Then in 2003, the dual mandate was coming on in 2004. Niall took the Dáil seat in 99, and he was in both the council and the Dáil. And in 2003, he decided that he would give up the Dáil seat and give somebody a chance for a year before the dual mandate came on in 2004. So that's how I came to be on it.
And of course, you know, you only stay on the council because you go in front of the people every 5 years if it's full term, and you know, it's. I think I think maybe which party you're with helps to some extent, but you know, you also have to be seen to be doing the work on the ground, because you know the electorate aren't silly; they can turn on you very quickly.
Without a doubt, you know, without the people out there, so many loyal people out there, wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah. Your time at the council, Niall, what do you remember from it?
I suppose it was, for me, it was my training ground. It was like my college into politics. And I think the council is a very important starting point, because when that dual mandate that they talked about came in, up to that you had your TDs and as councillors as well. There was an awful lot of knowledge lost at council level. So those 4 years I was there was a great grounding. And knowledge of what happens at local level, and the importance of what happens at local level, and the importance of being able to work with them locally to ensure that you get projects delivered, how to get them delivered, how best to get them delivered, and make them work, to ensure that the council officials and councillors are working with you.
Yeah, for sure. So take us back to the beginning, 1925. Who wants to tell us a bit about Neil? This is where it all began.
Well, I suppose we'll tell you as best as we can and as we know it. He would have been old IRA. He was first elected to the council in 25. Sean Lamass would have came to our home place in Rosnakill in 26 to recruit him. As we know it, I know Sean Lamass has read about his time in his autobiography in relation to coming to Rosnakill and meeting a 4-year-old on the road who later was Neil T, who later joined his cabinet. But he would have spent 2.5 hours in a field there beside home where there's now a community centre, and he would have told Sean Lamass, if you recruit Sean Moylan in Cork, who was former old IRA, and Paddy Smith in Cavan, if they're on board, I'm on board, and that's as it worked out. And he was a TD then up to maybe I think 38. He tried to take 2 more with him at 38, and he overcooked it. He lost it himself. He spent a term in the Shannon, and then was back in the following term to 48, his death in 48, and Neil took over in 48. He won the by-election in 48 following the death of the grandfather. Became a minister in a number of roles. Would have made quite a mark for himself as a minister. I remember meeting Phil Hogan a few years ago, and he talked about in the Customs House how much of the legislation that's currently still there today is carrying Neil's name on it. Some of the things that he delivered were far-reaching and thinking outside the box. And again, in agriculture, he was the first to introduce subsidies, etc., and would have made a fair mark for himself. And then I suppose the arms trial and all around that era, and him departing with Fianna Fáil, or he said himself, Fianna Fáil departed him, or left him. There was a very difficult era for, I suppose, the northern half of the country during that whole Troubles period. And I suppose he and his dad would have made a mark for themselves then after that as an independence. And I suppose they carried with them a vociferous nature in political life. I think it should be compared somewhat today with Jim McGuinness's vociferous nature. They ran an organisation so tightly and so dominantly, but they had a following that was second to none. My father was on the ground here all the time, and he kept that organisation taken over with meetings all over the county, meeting all these people. They'd all come in and gather together around election time. The control they had election time, particularly around the Milford and Letterkenny areas.
But not exclusively. I mean, even down my part of the county.
There would have been a bit of it as well, but the real control they had was
and was that organisation discipline? What was the?
It was organisation, but it was the massive following they had. But it was organising. The real, I suppose, hard work went into the organising of it. They had great numbers, but they used to great effect. Like around Letterkenny and Milford at election day, they would know by that night if they were at the races or not. They would get the feedback from all their people locally on the ground. The guys locally on the ground would know who voted what way, who was in, who wasn't. They had a fair idea by that night if they were going to be elected the next day or their candidates were going to be elected the next day or not. And I suppose that's gone into politics now. Politics is different now, as you know. It's all very much social media led.
But that being said, I think it's the grassroots stuff that genuinely, that still resonates. There's a lot of noise on social media, but I think you can't beat seeing someone's face, shaking someone's hand, having that conversation.
There's still an element of it, but there's not nowhere to near the same degree.
Yeah.
Like you might have.
It's not as valued then, or as influential.
You'd be aware of Carrigart and Downings. Like you might go on and have maybe a meeting in Downings, and they might have 40 locals in at a meeting. Same in Carrigart. Everywhere there's a booth, they had a big, large meetings. And they controlled the booth on that day and made sure that vote was out, the Blaney vote was out, or the Fianna Fáil vote was out. So it was a fantastic organisation, but an awful lot of, Liam mentioned earlier, but an awful lot of loyal people. And they were following them. They were extremely lucky as well, the people they had around them.
So that's Neil Blaney. We moved into his son Neil T. Blaney. He was on the council after his father's death, 1948, remained there for 9 years and was chair 1955 to 1957, then elected into the Dáil, passed away in 1995, as you mentioned. It's interesting the ministries that were there, Minister for Posts and Telegraphs, but also to Minister for Local Government and Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries. I wonder if you looked on sort of now, Liam, at where we are at with the fisheries, how he might reflect.
Well, both the farming and the fisheries, I suppose, up to this year, both had struggled for a long number of years. And as Niall mentioned there, but he was one of the first to introduce subsidies into the farming. And look, we see where the fishing is today, and it's nearly non-existent in this county. Back then was a different story. So it's hard to know if they were about today what the story would be. But just one wee thing, Greg, and I was not trying to pull you up or anything, but after my grandfather died in 48, Neil was elected in the by-election in 48, so he was a TD from 48.
You pulled Caroline up, she gave me the information.
I don't mean to pull on anybody up.
No, listen, that's why we're having this conversation.
But yeah,
I've always found the Blaney story hard to track because it goes off in so many, or at least it appears to do when you're sort of outside it, if you know what I mean, and who's who, and lots of names kind of sound the same. Neil, Niall, Neil. You know what I mean? So
most of them's Neil or Neil. Myself and fellas are the odd ones.
And do you find yourself, are you both as equally interested in your family history? Are you as much, Liam, as maybe Niall is?
Yeah, I wouldn't have been very interested in it until maybe 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I started to get into through a book that Vincent Bresson done at Donegal County Council. And since he done that book, I've got a lot more interest in it.
And what was it in that book that sort of...
He done a book from Donegal County Council from 1889 until when it started, until 2022. And a lot of very valuable information on that about everybody, you know. And I started getting to that, and I started to look back in all the history at that stage and see what it was.
Maybe that's an age thing. And I don't mean that in any way. No, I really genuinely don't. But, you know, like I've always sort of found myself living in the present, but now I've sort of started wondering about, you know, what my granny did or what my grandfather did or census records. I never thought I'd be that person.
Well, I have two sisters that are interested in the family tree, and one of them's the oldest and one is the youngest. So if you would like to hear, it's an age thing, anyway.
Yeah. So what would you say would be, Niall, the most challenging period of the Blaney's 100 years? Was it sort of convincing people back into the Fianna Fáil fold or something else or what?
Well, I suppose over that lifetime you'd have faced so many challenges, and probably the grandfather would have had his, and you can imagine when he lost his seat in 38. The pressure would have been on to regain that seat. And I suppose you weren't getting a whole lot from national. It delivered locally back then. It was more national politics that you were in, but retaining that seat. I suppose then for Neil T taking over, being a minister and losing out, and separation with Fianna Fáil, for him, my father, that would have been tough. Really tough. Really tough. And even during the Troubles, it was tough. Then Neil never had a constituency office. So our home, we were steeped in agriculture as well as politics. Neil had a farm, my father ran that as well as the farm at home. So we were brought up in all of that, but he had no constituency office. And our home growing up was a hotbed of politics. And every night of the week, people were coming back in a time, and there wasn't a whole lot on TV. Phones weren't really available. Growing up, people were coming to see what was going on, and there was such a massive interest in politics back in those days. And it was different times, you know.
How could you deliver so well back then? Now, I mean, you know, if you look at some of the things that were delivered, I'm just looking at some of my notes here, just in terms of water to Highland, right? And then obviously the bridge, okay, which is fantastic for the area. And I think it kind of, for people not from the area, they see it as some sort of a white elephant, but it's incredibly important for connecting, you know, two parts of Donegal and made from the Highland Peninsula much of the county so much more accessible. But how were things like that delivered?
Well, Neil was in Post and Telegraphs that time. He brought in the group water schemes, and Highland and a number of other regions, Donegal, were one of the first to be prepared for it and got underway. But that was one of the great things that Neil did get to deliver. The likes of the ATU and Letterkenny, it was the RTC back then, the Regional Technical College. Those type of things as a minister were much easier delivered. The bridge was my father's time, and I suppose my father's approach was a little bit different to Neil's. Neil was very much a national politician in his later years and with national issues, whereas my father was on the ground all over those years, keeping the organisation going, knowing what the issues were on the ground, being in the council and knowing what we were lacking. And the idea of the bridge first was mooted back, I would say at this stage it's at least 70 years ago. There was a small bridge proposed between near our home place, Rosnikill, Tamney, and a place called Morris, across to Ballyhearn. And the grandfather was the one that pushed that bridge. And there's actually drawings of that bridge still in Lifford, and the road sign. That was, yeah, when I worked there, you remember them being there. I've seen them, but that was the first bridge was muted, and then that government failed, never happened. And the money's gathered locally in relation to that bridge, so they used that and they built a chapel in Ballyhearn, and that was part of that coming around. So my father was always conscious of a bridge, and there was a former engineer, county engineer here from Mayo, Des Mahan, good friend of my father's. He pushed the idea of the plincha hopping, and that wasn't about just the bridge. It was the bridge plus the 2-car ferries. My father was a hobby horse in relation to that for quite a number of years. He was in the regional cross-border group as well. So he'd been pushing that quite a bit. But when he got in there in '97, there was one of the big parts of his I suppose, shopping list with Bertie. And there were so much studies in relation to that. It never really got anywhere in his time. So that's where I came in then, and I suppose that was a big part of going back to Fianna Fáil, ensuring that bridge was delivered. And I suppose it was 7 years after my father was gone, we did get it delivered. But it's not easy getting things delivered nationally. It's very, very difficult as an independent, and I suppose my father's focus was giving something back. And I suppose it's something that I picked up then as a politician. It's about giving back, and I suppose it's about someday after we're not around, maybe when there's no Blaney around, at least there'll be a party there to laugh the people that were so loyal to all the Blaneys all over the years.
And Liam, people, as I say, even as close as Letterkenny, don't get the bridge. If you know what I mean, it's like that bridge should be where, you know. I'm not aware of that. I don't have to tell you that, right? But for people in the area, it's significant, and I suppose you have to plug away and get what you can for your own area. We're having a big conversation about that right now in medical matters. You know, people plug for their own areas.
Yeah, but no, as far as the bridge is concerned, and you mentioned Letterkenny, you know, like Niall mentioned there, how far or how long we were fighting, looking to get a bridge there, and at that time there was no mention or no word for a bridge needed in Letterkenny. It was just after the bridge was delivered there that people started to realise, you know, we need this land. Maybe a short time before it, and look, we're campaigning now for over 20 years for it as well, and hopefully. Hopefully by 2030 we will see some movement as far as the bridge is concerned. But Letterkenny definitely needs a bridge without a doubt. But one other thing that maybe Niall forgot to say there was Donegal Coast Road as well. And you know it's known nationally now through the rally stages as one of the best stages, and along with Fannet Head and with Atlantic Drive and the country, you know. But no, as far as the bridge is concerned, I do get it fairly regular still about moving the bridge up at times.
Well, if you can figure out how it's done, name a price, and maybe the people of Fannet might negotiate.
No, I don't think that now that the bridge is there and the people realise how valuable it is to people of Fannet and Kerrygarden and Doonings, that I don't think that any price would move it.
There have been times over the last couple of years that some might feel that maybe the loyalty to Fianna Fáil is, you know, your loyalty to Fianna Fáil particularly, I think, Niall, and then obviously, you know, people close to you are going to feel it as well, that, you know, did it wobble at all? Because there have been a couple of interesting decisions or positions whereby it felt maybe that your loyalty wasn't being rewarded? I don't want this to get into a heavy sort of deep political thing, even though we're talking about politics at all. But, when we talk about the history and maybe what the modern day history might be if someone writes a book and does an interview with you or what have you, like has your loyalty to Fianna Fáil wobbled at all over the last few years?
Well, maybe I'll take it back to go back to Fianna Fáil and why it happened.
Yeah.
And I suppose I was someone that always would have been interested in history and the history of the grandfather, because that's why we're already involved. And not just even him, my grandmother as well. She would remember coming a man and would have had a military pension in her later years. So it was coming at us from both sides. So going back to Fianna Fáil, I suppose it would have been a desire of mine, but it wasn't about me, it was about the organisation.
Yeah.
I remember employing Joanne Swinney Burke at the time,
Mhm.
doing an internal survey of the party, just where we're at, because I couldn't live what my father Neil lived. I needed to make my own curve here,
Of course, yeah.
my own path, and
Next
that's what it
generation.
was about, exactly. And that's what it was about. And we done the internal, we went round all the commons, across Donegal, from Ballyshannon, right to north, Inishowen, and across the west. And we covered all the commons, and we done this internal survey. And while the majority of the membership became what been very much Milford, Letterkenny, Leyden, over 70% of them, without us mentioning Fianna Fáil in the survey, said we should be back in Fianna Fáil.
Yeah.
And that was where I wanted to be. So
That's where the party
2005,
wanted
I took a year negotiations with Bertie Ahern, and eventually got over the line in 2006. And it wasn't about me; it was about the organisation. It's about and that was where my father was coming to in his later years as well, particularly looking for so much back for Donegal. And I could mention all day. I'm not going to go into now this list he had. We'll unveil it someday. He got an awful lot for Donegal, but it's about the people. It's about ensuring we get our fair share.
Why was it so important for Fianna Fáil to repair those bridges, if you know what I mean? In other words, why was the bargaining chip from the Blaney perspective so strong? What did Fianna Fáil want out of it?
Well, I remember, and this isn't known either.
It wasn't the first time, just to say, it wasn't the first time that the Blenneys looked to get back into Fianna Fáil back in the 80s. They did as well a couple of times.
There was a couple of efforts with Charlie and Bernard Lynch.
You were about to say something that hadn't been revealed before. Can we get back to that?
In 97, Finn Gael were pushing Hardy back into power again. I remember the former Taoiseach Noonan coming to the First Nations van and meeting my father, trying to get him on board, himself and Phil Hogan and John Cushnan. Met my father and John Doyle and Jimmy Begley, who really were his background team, and they offered my father the Ministry for Agriculture on that occasion. But Fianna Fáil was where he was, is where my uncle Neil was as well, and people maybe find that hard to believe, but on a number of occasions he flew back from Europe to save Charlie in the 80s. We always heard about the Gregory deal, but Neil was part of that as well and keeping them in power. So the Fianna Fáil element of politics in our house is deep, and it goes back those 100 years. And really that's the gra with the party and the roots.
But have you had
the history of it all,
Do you feel you've had to swallow anything over the last couple of years, given...
You do. It's more difficult in a party, Craig, absolutely. Yeah. And in the last couple of years we've had our difficulties and differences, but that's politics. But politics is about relationships. Sometimes doesn't go your way, but you have to get on with it, and there'll be another day. You have to be big enough to get over it and move on.
Liam, is it tough being a councillor? I mean, it depends on the individual, right? So, I mean, there's lots of different things that happen. There's the majority of the work that happens out of the public eye. There's a little bit of the stuff then that sort of happens in the public eye, right? And then, your phone always having to be on and all that kind of stuff. And then we're in this day and age whereby now, simply by being a Blaney or being Fianna Fáil, there are going to be people who have a go. It doesn't matter what you do, right? So, does that get to you? Are you the type that it doesn't bother you? You don't get actually really as much of it as I'm making out? I mean, is it tough, or are you so long in the game now that you just bat it off?
I wouldn't get too much off that at all, and I don't do very much.
I was wondering why you're sitting so far away from Niall. I don't want to catch any of it.
I don't really do social media, so and look, I don't read into it either.
Yeah,
and I just there's people out there going to do that no matter what you do, and I just ignore it.
But now you're a different kettle of fish, because when things are pretty quiet, you poke the bear. It's almost like you bring it on to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, do you like controversy? Do you just stick? You've got views and you're going to get them out there, or what's the story? Because you're a divisive enough character in some of your opinions on things. No, you know what I mean. Like, you shoot from the hip. You don't. You don't run stuff through a filter. Like, I
don't say one thing today and change my opinion next week. I suppose that's part of our political dynasty. We speak our mind. We tell it as it is. Sometimes that doesn't go down well on social media. But I suppose, getting back to the council element of it, I would say, the councillors do the donkey work. They have the face-to-face with the public day in, day out. The national politics is now onto a different scene. And I suppose there's such a large element of social media to that now as well, because back in the early days, there's been so much work getting back to constituency, and I had to attend funerals and attend meetings and functions and the rest of it, and go to different events, and where there's issues, go and attend whatever issue of the day was, and try and sort things out. Whereas a lot of that is done now in social media. A lot of the contact is done with social media. There are some TDs now that don't actually leave Dublin. They can ring you up. They can ring their local radio station up. Politics has changed in that perspective, but not for the councillor. The councillor is still the bread and butter on the ground.
Yeah, and Liam, the one thing about the 100 years, which, I mean, we can only scratch the surface on given the time that we've had, we can look at the names, the obvious names, and I think you referenced your mother a little earlier on, Niall, but whether it's those 40 people that turn up at a meeting in Carragart over the years, or whether it's the people that are out putting up the posters or what have you. There's been an awful lot of people that have been involved in, supporting the Blaney family over the 100 years and keeping them there as well. It's not just about the elected reps.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and there was a lot of elected people as well, especially when we were an independent Fianna Fáil, and we start naming people here. There's nowhere to stop.
Yeah, I know what you're saying there.
But a lot of very, very loyal people. And I suppose we go to elected people, we go to the Kellys of Falcara, the Larrikins and Letterkenny, the Keaveneys and O'Showen. Actually, there's a certain council at the moment was I think after the third attempt in 1999 was elected as an independent Fianna Fáil councillor, Albert Doherty. He lost his seat in 2004, but he came back in 2014. I think it was again as a Sinn Féin councillor. But we had, a lot of people. There was Philip Diggins down there, and Buncrana. There was Harkins, Danny Harkin was in the council here, and Eamon was very big in the politics. And as I say, I'm going to leave people out now. It's hard to think everybody just want to put in the spot, but
a few in Ballyshannon Town Commission as well.
Yeah. All over, not just on the county too. There's a few outside the county as well, and and along with that, then a lot of very, very loyal people.
Now, I'll reflect on the 100 years. How would you describe, I suppose, what your forefathers, you, Liam, what you, I don't know what you stand for. What's your, not literally what's written under your crest, but what you would hope, the Blaneys are perceived of over a century, sorry.
Well, it's not something that you reflect on, Greg, and it's not something I reflected on, but I have to say it's an absolute privilege to be trusted and elected in Donegal over that period of time. It's a massive stretch of time in any world politics scene for us to be continuously elected over that period of time. It's quite an honour, and we look forward to continue the work and do the best we can for the people.
And have we got a sub? Is there any subs coming up? Can you
just before you go to the subs, I say as well, just the late Eddie O'Donnell and his wife Anne was independent Fianna Fáil councillors, and later the son John then was from 2014, 2024.
I put you on the spot. It's hard to remember anyone. I think you've done a good job, but
the subs, as far as the subs was concerned, it's got a lot more difficult to be in politics.
That's it. You see,
the young
it's
people
not for
see that
now.
And especially social media the way it is, and the young people there today. The older ones of the younger generation see social media as a stumbling block to why they would maybe possibly think about it.
That's it. But you had your own stumbling blocks. You had no interest and ended up being persuaded. And look, here we are now. So who's to say? But I do. I think it's not thankless. That's a crazy way of putting it. But it's a big decision. It's a big decision to put yourself out there now.
The most difficult decision in politics nowadays. Back in Father and Neil's day, I suppose they were looked upon as icons.
Pillars of the community, elevated.
Yeah, and sometimes the council seats were every 7 years. Now it's security is the secure job, and that's another factor for anybody in politics. You know.
And as well as that, when you're in opposition, is easy, very easy, because you can shout for everything, and some people shout for everything and agrees with nothing. But when you're in power and you're in a party that is in power, that's a lot harder, definitely a lot harder, because when you're not there, you can, as I say, you can agree to everything.
I think
and you don't have to produce anything.
I think the public get that, and the public look clever, and I think maybe in the last general election they looked at it and they heard the message of change, and they looked at it and says, well, is there change there? I'm not being anti any party, whatever. I'm just sort of analysing what I think the public did, and they went, well, you know what? Better the devil you know, or whatever it might be. So the public are up.
The more astute than better for you.
For sure, and generally, that's the way politics works. All right, listen. Thanks so much, Liam. Thanks so much, Niall. Liam, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just finally, one wee thing, Greg, for the commemoration of the civic receptions have been held on Friday, just to make everybody aware, because people think that's just for a family thing. It's not. It's open to the public, for anybody that feels that they want to be there, no matter what party they belong to. You'll be very welcome.
Yeah, and
later on, that even if you're working, you can't make it, feel free to join us at Natasha after 8 p.m.
Open bar? No.
Come along and see, Greg. Come along and see.
All right, Councillor Liam Blaney, Senator Niall Blaney, as I say, 100 years continuously in elected politics, and what a history it is. And it's well documented, actually, as well. And I can't even scratch the surface in the time we had, but there's a lot of stuff written out there as well that people, and it's well worth a read, actually. Niall, Liam, both of you, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks very much.
Do you have a job vacancy that needs filled fast? Tried everything but still no luck? Let Highland Radio's Job Spot do the work for you. We'll share your vacancies with 70,000 daily listeners in Donegal, Derry and Tyrone every Monday, Wednesday and Friday during prime time. Plus, your jobs will be listed on highlandradio.com under our Job Spots section. It's fast, cost effective and reaches the people you need. Contact our advertising team today on 07491 253 22 or email advertising@highlandradio.com. Highland Radio, delivering your message across the Northwest.
Bring your family on a day out to Dublin on Saturday, 5th of July for the Rally for Life. Sponsored buses by Donegal Pro Life. To book your seats, ring Margaret on 089 246 9599. That's 089 246 9599.
Imagine this, toes in the sand at Old Head Beach, the thrill of zip-lining at Westport Adventure, wandering colourful streets, ice cream in hand, sailing across the calm waters of Clew Bay, the wind in your hair on the Great Western Greenway. Westport. Find your own adventure at destinationwestport.com.
Who the hell are you? Get ready, Donegal. Highland Radio is throwing a party like no other. It's the Big Highland Summer Bingo Party, hosted with me, Keith Fletcher.
And mealy gooch Hawaiian shirts, hulas, how the hula are ya? Big laughs and even bigger cash prizes. With €1,000 up for grabs, expect big party tunes, madness and just a little bit of mayhem.
So, Saturday the 2nd of August at Jackson's Hotel, Ballabafay.
You better get your tickets quick on eventbrite.com.
Hey, what? Is it over 18s?
You better mention it's over 18.
Okay. And it's over 18s.
Would you like to experience the magic of Riverdance 30, the new generation? Come along with Highland Radio on Thursday, August the 28th for an unforgettable trip to Dublin's Gaiety Theatre. Enjoy luxury coach travel, a night stay at the 4-star Grand Canal Hotel, and premium seats to the iconic show. Spaces are limited, so secure your spot today. Call us now on 074 91 25000 or visit the outlet at highlandradio.com.
Get ready for big savings in the Hillary Summer Sale. Enjoy up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, there's €50 off your blind order when you choose electric, making controlling your blinds a breeze. And if you find the same product with the same service for less, we'll match the price. Book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.ie. Don't settle for off the shelf. Let us take the stress away. It's what we've been doing for over 40 years. Hillary's Summer Sale. For the window wise. Conditions apply.
Want a new Kia? Call to Heron Auto Donegal to arrange your test drive on our 252 Kia range, where quality customer care comes first. We have 0% finance available on all EV models. Visit Heron Auto on the Killybegs Road to test drive and order your 252 Kia and receive a €500 Super Value gift card. Drive with confidence. Drive with Heron Auto.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenny's. Find all your summer essentials from fashion and accessories to beauty and homeware at McElhenny's. Explore more in-store or shop online at mcelhennys.com today.
Now, mostly cloudy today with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Heavy and persistent at times. It will become drier and brighter later. Temperatures 17 to 20 degrees with light to moderate southerly winds veering northwesterly later. A nice story actually just to bring you from our website. Aaron Moore, RNLI's volunteer crew, they had a busy day on Friday afternoon last, having responded to a request from Malin Coast Guard to assist in a medical evacuation at 1:30pm with a patient transfer by ambulance from Burton Port to Letterkenny University Hospital. Well, having completed the mission, the lifeboat crew made their way back to Aaronmore to provide a guard of honour and welcome their colleague and crew member Aisling Cox and her husband Phil Cole on board the lifeboat. Ashley, the teacher on the island, not only volunteers on the lifeboat, but is also an emergency first responder on the voluntary ambulance service. Following their welcome by the lifeboat crew, Ashley and Phil then travelled on board the newly launched Aaronmore Blue to Burton Port and then on to the Waterfront Hotel in Dunlow for their wedding reception. And following their busy afternoon, the lifeboat was again tasked by Malin Coast Guard to go to Burton Port for the Now Doctor at 6:56 to assess a patient on Aaronmore and eventually anchored the boat after 8pm. So it's a mixed bag. Doing great work in providing medical assistance, but in the middle there, able to assist in making Ashley and Phil's day a special one. Greg, I recently noticed the house in Lifford was totally renovated and given out, which is great, but I found it interesting that it's not air to water because it's so expensive. Yet, if I build a house, I have to do it. How can it be one rule for the public and another rule for the council? Why would you have to put in air to water? Maybe I'm not in the process of building anything, but I can't believe we're compelled to do that, are we? I agree with you, listener. Donegal is constantly abused online by some supporters from other counties. We never receive fair pundency, always undertones of scoffing. Peter Canavan and Linda McGinley, probably the only two pundits who give us any worthy praise. Well, people seek the Sunday game approval, and I never get that. I don't watch the Sunday game. I can't remember the last time I watched it, and I don't even listen to TV half-time stuff because often it's to antagonise, it's to poke you, it's rage baiting. It's popular to dislike Ulster football. It's popular to like Donegal. Don't expose yourself to it. Who cares? You know, it's only sport. And the best way to shut these people up is on the pitch against Meath in a couple of weekends' time. And hopefully whomever we face in the final. And then it doesn't matter what these people have to say. If you are successful, people will try and bring you down. So if people are having a go at you, it means you must be doing something right. And the Donegal team are doing plenty right. And Jim McGuinness is doing plenty right. And as long as the success on the pitch comes, maybe they're saying, look, lads, bring it on. The Tyrone versus Kerry game is looking like the Saturday, I'm told, because they have small support. This will be played before the Tallaght Cup final. And I think we might be on Sunday. So don't take that as a given, but that's a little bit inside info, that we might be the Sunday game. So just keep that in the back of your head, folks. That Tyrone Kerry might be before that other cup final and we might be there for the Sunday. So just wait and see, but that's what I'm hearing. Hi, Greg and Brendan. What a wonderful and wacky weekend of football. There were thrills and spills and no doubt good at the GEA Tills, indeed. Eamon McGee didn't hold back on last word in sport as well. Bums on seats, indeed. Well, Karma is a you-know-what, as Dublin and Armagh are out. One thing for sure, there'll be green and gold colours in the final. That comes in from Kevin in Dunlow. Listening to what's being said about Marion Harkin being such a ferocious worker for her constituents and therefore getting what she wants, it tells me that our representatives aren't working hard enough on our behalf. Well, you see, I didn't realise it, but perhaps maybe in me asking Michael Healy-Rae that question as it relates to the surgical hub situation, that I got the impression that maybe he's of the view that majority of our listeners are pleased that it's going to Sligo. But I think that's only on reflection. But again, as I say, what it absolutely confirms, let there be no doubt, that, and he said it himself, the surgical hub in Sligo was a red line. And that's what the doctors have to overcome tomorrow night when they meet with the Minister for Health. Hi, Greg. If you really think that our government representatives are campaigning within government to have a hub moved to Donegal, you're badly mistaken. They may pretend to be. It's only a charade. That comes in from Martin. Martin, on this one, I'm going to trust my info, but I appreciate yours and I respect your opinion, of course, as I respect everyone's opinion. A caller says, we need to not be so wasteful when it comes to defective concrete block rebuilds. There should be a clause that you reuse windows and doors, etc. Too much good stuff is being dumped and it's a waste of money. If you can't build a house for €460,000, something is far wrong. Well, I'm telling you, that's the top level of grant, by the way. Make no mistakes about that. Not everyone or anyone's really getting that. A lot has to come out of that. And it's not necessarily practical to always reuse windows and doors. Just a few reaction to the Blaneys. Listen, that wasn't going ever to be a hard-hitting interview. It was about recognising a family's 100 years of service to a county, and the same grace and respect would be afforded to any person of any political party or none. Huge congratulations to the entire Blaney families on their sustained commitment of 100 years service to the public. Noel T took over from the father the year I was born. Many thanks. Congratulations, Niall and Liam and all the Blaney family on 100 years of real Donegal politics, real true politics, the best political family in the country. Our parents met in 1948 and were a real Blaney marriage. That comes in from Helen and Mary. Greg, great listening to the history of the Blaney family through the decades. Could you ask them to sort another bridge for Letterkenny, please? Lots of you are calling for that. Neil T was the man who brought rural electrification to all of Ireland. The Nocala Coastal Road was their late grandfather's idea, which Neil T completed. What vision? The ferry across the Swilly. Listening to the two Blaneys, typical Fianna Fáil, all about ground roots and the party. If Fianna Fáil perhaps concentrated more on Donegal, would possibly be in a much better place. Save seats, says a listener. Thanks to Neil T. Blaney for getting the regional college in Letterkenny in the early 70s and the fabulous Nocala Scenic Road back in the late 60s, and to Harry for the Mulroy Bridge almost 20 years ago. And more, actually, quite a lot of congratulatory messages, which we'll get to tomorrow. But not with me, because I'm not here. I'm off tomorrow and I'm off Wednesday because there's a few bits and bobs to do. But it'll be business as usual. Come back here tomorrow morning at 9 and don't go anywhere.